Good evening and welcome to the regular meeting of the Petaluma City Council and the Petaluma Community Development Successor Agency for Monday, January 26, 2026. If you wish to provide public comment on tonight's agenda, please fill out a speaker card, and they are located at the back of the room, and please bring it to our clerk, who is at the front of the room on my right. Also note that we do our meetings with a concurrent translation system. They're available for this meeting in Spanish and in a variety of other languages. And to access the translation online, please use the link that is on the agenda if you're holding an agenda, or if you're at home and can see this on the agenda. Or if you're in the room, we have the QR code in the back of the room you can sign on with. So with that, I'd like to have our city clerk take our roll call for the evening.
Barnacle?
Present.
Cater Thompson?
Here.
DeCarly?
Here.
Now?
Here.
Quint?
Here.
Shribs?
Here.
McDonald?
Here.
And we do have a quorum.
Thank you very much. Let's all please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And we'll have a moment of silence here. Also, from time to time, the council uses this opportunity to honor a member of the Petaluma community who's contributed to the fabric of Petaluma through their efforts and their life, and who has recently passed. And tonight we'll be closing our meeting in honor of Sid Lipton. And I'd like to ask Councilwoman Cater Thompson to say a few words about Mr. Lipton.
Thank you. Sid Lipton, a good man, left us. He tried his best to stay around till his 100th birthday. He didn't make his birthday of April 13th, which is my birthday also, but a different year. He was a good man. He was very benevolent. And I'm really glad that we're closing the meeting in honor of him. He's worked with PEP for many years. He worked at B'nai Israel on their building committee, but he also worked for Wright and Aretsky, and this goes way back, and it was a contracting group, and he was just a really good human. So I'm going to miss him.
He has been involved in very many community efforts, so it's appropriate to close the meeting in honor of Sid Lipton tonight. With that, we move down to our agenda approval, and I look up and down the dais at this point to see if anyone wishes to change the agenda from as you have it printed in your hands. Seeing no one wishing a change, the agenda is adopted as printed. Tonight, our first item of business is our presentation we have, and the presentation is about Sonoma Water and the updates we have on the water transmission system and the capital projects involved. And I'd like to invite Chelsea Thompson, our Director of Water Resource and Utilities, to the podium to start the presentation.
Good evening, Mayor and Council members. My name is Chelsea Thompson, Director of Water Resources and Utilities, and tonight we have Sonoma Water here to provide an update on its transmission system, capital, and maintenance projects. Sonoma Water is a wholesale water supplier that provides water to more than 600,000 residents in portions of Sonoma and Marin counties, including the city of Petaluma. This presentation is being provided in advance of the fiscal year 26 and 27 water transmission budget and rate setting process. So Sonoma Water will return to Council in March with a presentation on Petaluma's imported rates for the upcoming fiscal year. With that, I'll have Kent Gilfie up.
Good evening, Mayor McDonald and members of the council. I'm Kent Gilfie, Director of Engineering at Sonoma Water, and I'm joined by my colleague, David Royal, who will be up here in a moment, who's our Assistant General Manager of our Operations and Maintenance Division. We really appreciate the opportunity to be here this evening to present updates on, as Chelsea mentioned, some of Sonoma Water's water supply transmission system projects, our capital projects, and some of our maintenance efforts. We'd like to highlight some of the ways that Sonoma Water's continuing efforts to assure the reliability and resiliency of our water transmission system that serves your Petaluma community. So it was about this time last year that we were reporting to the various boards and councils of our various water contractors. We unfortunately missed the opportunity to present to your council. So many of the updates I'll be providing are given relative to what we were reporting about this time last year. We do hope you find the information to be helpful ahead of the budget discussions that'll be occurring in March in the presentation to your council that Chelsea made reference to. We do have a number of slides, so I'll jump right in. But I want to take the opportunity to thank council members Cater Thompson and DeCarly for their roles on our Water Advisory Committee, which is a significant point of coordination for Sonoma Water with our water contractors. And we had the privilege of going on a tour with both of you this past year. Appreciate that role, as well as Chelsea Thompson's and Dan Herrera's role on our Technical Advisory Committee, and various other staff that we engage with on flood control and sanitation as it relates to our Pengrove sanitation zone. So we appreciate all the points of coordination and partnership with the city. Next slide. So we'll touch on some of the projects that were recently completed in 2025 or are in active construction, or those that are in upcoming design, as well as some planning and maintenance efforts. Next slide. So quickly, Chelsea gave some of this, but just quickly for introduction for those who might be less familiar with Sonoma Water in the room. We are a wholesale water supplier, some 600,000 residents in Sonoma and Marin counties. Our direct customers are the retail water suppliers or our water contractors that are shown on the slide, which are many of the cities and the water districts that supply directly to individual homes and businesses. Our primary source of water is the Russian River. It's aided by two federally sponsored storage projects, one at Lake Mendocino and the other at Lake Sonoma, shown in the graphic there as well. We convey that water supply through the Russian River. Where we divert it from the river, where we divert water from the river at our pumping production facilities near the Wohler Mirabel area, near Forestville, and into our water transmission system, which is the black dotted lines you could barely see as being black dotted, but that's the southern portion of that graphic there. And Petaluma being at the southern end of our water transmission system, though we do have contractors in Marin, who serve in Marin County as well. Next slide. So I'll start here with a snapshot of our 2025 active and completed water transmission system construction projects. They're ordered here on this list by their contract award date. Most of these were touched on in the updates we gave last year, but this list does provide a good overview and update of the current schedule outlook for completing these various projects, along with their awarded contract values. You can see that a few of these construction contracts have been completed, including a couple of contracted phases of our Santa Rosa Plain Wells project and a contract for recoating a couple of the tanks. The remainder of these projects are in active construction and nearing completion in the first half of 2026, with the exception of our Wilford Booster Station project that just awarded in December and will complete in 2027. So I'll take a little bit closer look at those. Next slide, please. At the top of that list was our Eli Booster Pump Station. It's a project that we were reporting last year and highlighted as being subjected to significant procurement delays for our electrical equipment. Finally, in 2025, we did see that gear delivered. It arrived this last October. Those two lower photos see that gear, rather large gear being hauled into the site on Eli Road there. It was very tight. It is a theme of, I guess I'll highlight there that electrical gear supply it took 3.5 years for that gear to arrive. We awarded that contract in early 2022 and it arrived in October. So that is the worst case for us, but electrical gear in general has been had very long lead times for our projects in recent years. This is a FEMA-funded resiliency project to replace electrical gear and to protect it from flooding that occurs near Eli Road in the Pengrove, Petaluma area. We are now scheduled to energize that new switchgear this month, and the project is anticipated to complete in May once we relocate the generator and get it elevated. Next slide. And under our multi-year tank rehabilitation program, wherein we are recoating the system's 18 above-grade welded steel storage tanks, we're also replacing cathodic protection systems, corrosion protection systems, addressing minor repairs, and evaluating potential seismic vulnerabilities that may need to be addressed. Early in 2025, we had wrapped up the contract for Katati 1 and Castagna tanks, so on the northern and southern ends of Petaluma. They provide a combined 18 million gallons of storage along the Petaluma aqueduct. The work for those two tanks included interior and exterior coatings, replacing and repairing corroded structural elements, and new cathodic protection systems. We are also reporting that the Castagna tank, south end of town, represented the removal of our last coal tar-lined tank, so we were especially pleased to complete that contract. Next. In May, we completed Occidental Well number 3 drilling contract. So this is part of work to complete the rehabilitation of 3 production wells in the Santa Rosa Plain, primarily utilized for drought resiliency. 2 of those 3 wells, our Sebastopol Road and our Occidental Road wells, are substantially funded with a $6.9 million state drought resiliency grant, and include, as part of the rehabilitation, the enhanced functionality to operate as aquifer storage and recovery wells, having the capability to recharge the groundwater from our water transmission system with those wells, and to store available winter water for later withdrawal and use. So at Occidental Road well, where we had to install a whole new well, drill a whole new well, we completed and closed out that well drilling contract in 2025. And at last year's reporting, the design for the subsequent well activation contract, wherein includes the construction of pumping and piping and electrical instrumentation and controls, that was just wrapping up at that time. That contract was awarded last year, is under construction. It's expected to be substantially complete next month, making the well functional for production purposes. Our grant closeout is in March. For this well, we weren't required to do the pilot testing for the ASR, the aquifer storage and recovery work. That'll be implemented next year, or later this year. Next. And at Sebastopol Road well, that well activation contract was substantially completed this past fall. You can see in the photos there on the left, you can kind of make them out. It's a very small site. It's very cramped with a lot of underground work, but we did get that substantially completed. Next slide, please. And at this well site, the ASR pilot testing is required under our grant, and it's currently underway, unlike the Occidental Road well. The ASR pilot test was initiated in October, consisting of 2 cycles of injecting water into the groundwater, storage of that groundwater, and then periods of recovery involving extensive water quality and groundwater level monitoring per the schedule and protocol that can be seen up there. The little green tag at the bottom indicates where we're currently at. We're actually 1 step below where that indicates. We're in the very last stage of recovery for that second cycle of the protocol. So we do expect to complete this month and move to grant closeout. Next. So next on our 2025 list is our Katati 3 tank. It's a singular 18 million gallon tank. It's the ugly looking one in that photo up at the top there. It has now got a pretty new exterior paint job. At last report, we had just advertised and awarded the recoating contract early in 2025. In addition to the interior and exterior work, the cathodic work, and minor repairs, we're also structurally retrofitting this tank for seismic purposes by widening the foundation ring to address a seismic vulnerability. That detail there, that white graphic, is just us detail of us widening that foundation. In addition, you may be able to see on those 2 photos to the far right, on the middle one and the lower one, we had these retainer clips in the roof structure that were failing and which resulted in those roof beams tipping over. several of them, and so we needed to repair those as well. Those have been repaired. So the status of the project is that the exterior coating is done, interior coating is primed, foundation widening should be wrap up at the end of this month, and completion for this project is scheduled in March. Next. So moving on to corrosion protection for our aqueducts. Our work converting our passive cathodic protection systems that are at their end of useful life to an impressed current system for both our Santa Rosa and our Cotati aqueducts was reported last year to soon be advertising the Phase 1 contract in early 2025. That phase did ultimately award this past July, consisting of some 8 rectifiers and anode well sites and 8 test stations. That contract is currently procuring material and is expected to complete in June of this year. The larger Phase 2 project would wrap up those 2 aqueducts. It has 2 to 4 times as many elements to it. Is currently in the process of wrapping up design and securing, well, not wrapping up design, but working on the design documents and securing the right-of-way and permits associated with that in order to advertise in fiscal year 27-28. Both phases require significant coordination with PG&E with respect to cathodic protection system that they may operate in close proximity to ours. Thanks. And finally, on that 2025 list of projects, at the Wilford Booster Station located along the Petaluma Aqueduct in Roanoke Park, we're updating outdated electrical equipment, addressing seismic vulnerabilities, and installing a redundant pump set for resiliency. This pump station normally pumps to the south towards Petaluma under normal operations. It is unique in our system, however, it is the one pump station that allows us to pump north also. So under certain exceptional operational conditions, it can benefit the northern and eastern portions of our system, maybe during a construction shutdown or following a disaster of some sort. It does give us some operational flexibility. This project was just awarded last month, and it will continue into 2027. So that's our list of the 2025 completed and or active construction projects. So next, and looking forward into 2026 and other capital projects that are in design and scheduled to advertise in 2026, with a couple of exceptions up there. Those are shown here on this list. I'll be focusing on those that are planned to advertise over the next few months. One of those is our Ralphine Tank Number 1. It's a 6 million gallon tank located at the upstream end of our Sonoma Aqueduct, serving eastern Santa Rosa and Sonoma Valley from Spring Lake area. Also, our Sonoma Tank Number 1 recoat project on that. It's located at the terminal end of the southern end of our Sonoma Aqueduct. Our RDS, or our River Diversion Structure Resiliency Improvements, involves needed pump and motor control center replacements and seismic resiliency improvements for a facility located along the Russian River where our inflatable dam is located and where we divert water out of the river and pump it into our transmission system. And our Warm Springs Dam hydropower project. It involves electrical upgrades to restore the function of our hydroelectric facilities at Warm Springs Dam up at Lake Sonoma, the revenue of which helps to offset or moderate water transmission system rate increases. The remaining projects on there are water treatment system modernization, CT compliance project, and our Wohler Road storage facility, as well as cathodic phase 2 or later this year. I'm sorry, cathodic phase 2 in 2027. My last slide before David comes up is just an update on our master plan development for our water transmission system. It's looking at a range of future needs for our transmission system for a 20-year planning horizon through year 2045. It's a 3-year effort. Last year, our consultant had completed tasks associated looking at baseline conditions, developing a project prioritization methodology. In the current fiscal year, they're going to be working with the contractors looking at water demand projections through the process where all the water contractors and us are developing our urban water management plans, and they'll be developing basis of cost information. And next fiscal year, they'll be looking at the identification of actual projects and the compilation of the plan in fiscal year 26-27. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, David. Thank you.
Good evening. Mr. Mayor, thank you for having us, council members. As a Petaluma resident, I'm privileged to be here tonight to share with you some of the work that we're doing in our O&M group, our operations and maintenance in Sonoma Water. Again, my name is David Royal. I'm the Assistant General Manager of that group. And what I'd like to share with you tonight is a discussion on a piece of software that is extremely near and dear to my heart. In the last 2 years, we have implemented a new computer maintenance management system from a vendor called NextGen. What we've done is we left our old system, which I won't name, but I feel really fortunate that we've had Water Agency upper management buy-in on bringing on a new system. And what we did over the last 2 years, we broke it into 2 phases. Phase 1, we really focused on our water and wastewater systems and the maintenance associated with those. And then in the last year, we've brought on the rest of our groups, which would include our collections team, field maintenance. There are the folks that work in the streams, especially in Petaluma, and SCADA, industrial waste, and then lastly, our emergency and safety management team. It's been really a labor of love. We inherited, we bought this piece of software that was a blank slate. And through the help of all maintenance staff, we have been able to populate it with all of our assets and then create work orders for each one of those, as well as the PM schedules to get that work done. What's really been beneficial about this software for us is that we are able to capture all of the labor associated with it, the costs associated with upgrades to our infrastructure. And so what that will do in the future is help populate our asset management program to give real data to the need to replace our aging infrastructure. Next slide, please. So here's a quick overview of our Sonoma Aqueduct, the Petaluma Aqueduct, and the Santa Rosa Aqueduct, just to give perspective to those and some of the tanks that we have associated with those, mainly in Sonoma. As Kent indicated, we've been undergoing a tank maintenance project for several years now. And then after that we move into our tank recoat process. As Kent indicated also, Castania Tank was our first tank to get a rehab. And in addition to that, our security team is also implementing security cameras as well as security fencing around all of our tank sites. Next slide, please. So as an example, we'll use NextGen for this tank maintenance program. Contractors who are doing the work will provide us monthly reports, which we'll update into our program. That will allow our engineers to see in real time the work that's being accomplished. And then we'll create work orders based on those systems and then provide those to field staff so that they can, with their tablets in the field, look at the tanks, configurations, where the valves are, the work that needs to be done, and we can also track exactly how much maintenance is going into each tank. Next slide, please. So, for example, this is one of our tank sites where we have both linear and horizontal assets. If we have a series of valves that are stacked on top of each other, it would be impossible just through a GIS map to identify them. But here you can see we have valves, stacking vertically and then horizontally the pipes that feed them. So in real time, staff in the field can click on a valve, see the manufacturer, date of install, maintenance that's been done on that piece of infrastructure, and then update, the records as they continue their work in the field. The mobile integration piece has really been vital for this. Staff don't have to come back at the end of the day to upload all the information that they're gathering in the field. It can be done in real time, and it's been a big savings for us. Next slide. So an example of some of the work we've been doing, this is Oakmont Tank on the Sonoma Aqueduct. We've been replacing a lot of our valves as we get the contractors ready for the maintenance, the tank cleanup and tank recoat projects. So it's been a real good opportunity for us to schedule everything to stay just one step ahead of the contractors that are coming in. Next slide. Here's an example of the same tank where we're installing our security fencing and our security cameras. We have a really robust security team now, and we get briefings from the United States, from the CIA, from the FBI on threats that are happening in the systems throughout the country, and we're able to utilize that information to keep all of our tanks safe, and try to stay one step ahead of threats as they might enter the system. Next slide, please. So this is an example of one of the vents on top of the tank. They used to be like 500-pound steel caps. Now we've replaced them all with fiberglass that are far more easy to manage, and our maintenance staff can take care of them themselves. So a lot of the projects that Kent was talking about, our mechanics and our field staff are working on that infrastructure all the time. And as you're aware, with the budget season coming up, and your own aging infrastructure that you're aware of, it's really important to prioritize everything that we do. And the water contractors really want to know, where is the money that's going for all of these rate increases? I can assure you that maintenance staff are taking care of all the infrastructure to the best of their ability, and we'll continue to do so. One thing I'd like to do, Kent mentioned that Councilmember Cater Thompson and DeCarly went on a tour with us. I'd love to extend that invitation to all of you if you'd be interested in checking out our water system. You'll get to see not only the production side where we take the water out of the river and treat the water, but then, the aqueducts, the storage tanks, and how it gets to you once it leaves the river. I'm hopeful that you guys found that tour helpful, and I know that we love giving them. Our staff take a lot of pride in our infrastructure, and if you're interested, please let Chelsea know, and she'll set that up with us. I think that's the last slide. So if there's any questions, Kent and I are happy to provide answers to those.
Thank you very much. Great presentation. Before I bring it up to the council and ask if there are any questions, I should note to the public that if public has comment on this presentation during general public comment, please feel free to have a card in to add that comment so that it can be included in the record too. And with that, I'll look at the council to see if there are any questions. Councilmember Shribs.
Just to check on the whole system, I know that on my personal computer, they're getting all sorts of spam and attacks and requests. And systems all over the U.S. are being under attack. How secure are the systems that are conserving our water and controlling this water flow for us?
That's a great question, and we talk about that all the time with our IT department, who tries to stay one step ahead of the bad guys out in the world. We have been assured that they are doing everything they can. We work in conjunction with County of Sonoma IT group as well. And I think the only thing that got through the system was a hacker from Romania who was just trying to see if they could get in. There was no malicious activity that occurred from that. But as far as I know, that's the only time we've had anybody get into the system. They're not trying to control our SCADA system or the maintenance of our system. Really, it's just, I think they're fishing to see if they can get in. So,
and I think you talked a lot about the pipes coming into where the stations are and the pumps and everything. What about the actual pipes themselves? Are they all up to speed and up to grade and good for the next 50 years, or do we need to really replace a lot of pipes over the next 20 years?
Yeah, we're definitely starting to look at an assessment of all of our piping and aqueduct systems right now. What we do sort of on a periodic basis is take coupons or take little chunks out of the pipe and analyze it to see how much steel is left, how much wear has there been, is the concrete coating that's inside still intact. And for the most part, a system that is 40 to 60 years old is in remarkably good shape. So we are just starting to take a look at where are the needs for replacement, prioritizing those projects. But right now, for now, our system looks pretty sound.
Good. And then when we're moving water, especially from the Russian River, the gravel beds out, at what point does it actually get treated for both for the chlorine and to create it more basics? Because I remember you used a couple terms in there about the treatments and coatings and the like. So can you explain the when is it treated? Mm-hmm. And so when the water comes out, I believe it's basic when it gets to our house. So could you explain that a little bit?
Okay, so what we do is we treat with chlorine in the caissons themselves. So we have 6 caissons where there's 2 pumps in each caisson, and that's how we extract the water from the gravels of the Russian River. As that water is introduced into our piping system, it's treated with chlorine on site. Then it makes its way to our treatment facility where we dose with caustic. The reason we do that is we don't want lead or other chemicals in pipes to leach out. And so by adding caustic, it precludes that from happening.
Okay, good. It's fairly more at the beginning rather than
Yes.
after the tanks and everything.
Exactly, it's all before it gets
Helping
to the
protect those
tanks.
tanks now that you've got them coated.
Yes,
Okay,
exactly.
good. I just wanted to check on those things. Thank you.
Yeah.
Councilmember Quinn?
Thank you. I'm curious how the how you see the pilot programs or the pilot tests for the ASR going at this point. Does it look promising? Are you optimistic, skeptical? Anything that you'd share? Thank you.
Kent, would you like to address that?
I don't know if we have a strong opinion at this point. They've been successful because we didn't want to overcharge the wells. The recharge rate was lower than we were hoping to be able to target. That just means the groundwater level was higher than we were expecting it to be at the time that we were doing the pilot test. But we haven't done the analytics yet on all the data. We had multiple monitoring wells around the two wells that we were implementing ASR at. We do water quality samples there, but all that data we're just wrapping up the ASR elements now on the one well, so we haven't done the analytics yet. But so far, from our groundwater folks, I haven't heard any alarm bells going off, so we're encouraged that the system's functional. During a case of a drought, we would expect those groundwater levels to be depleted and there'd be more available capacity for winter water recharge.
From this side, Vice Mayor DeCarli?
Thanks, David and Kent, for the presentation. Good to see you both, and I appreciate all the work that you do. It's an amazing infrastructure, and I still tell people about that tour, and try to teach them about it because it's an amazing system. So thank you for the update.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I did want to ask if there's a plan for a parallel Petaluma aqueduct at some point?
In long-range planning, there certainly in the past, we've developed a design for a parallel one. In conversations with other customers of ours, there's been discussion of potential parallel line as well. Those are not planned immediately. We need to take a look at the urban water management plan and looking at demands there. But there have been long-range discussions of a potential pipeline. But there's nothing in design at this stage.
Wonderful, thank you. And I want to thank you for the presentation tonight and all. And I just want to know it's nice to see you, Mr. Gilfie. Again, Mr. Gilfie and I worked together approximately 20 years ago at a different, 25?
35 to 40.
35 to 40. Boy, you're older than I thought. But it's nice to see how far you've come and what good basics Marin Municipal gave you.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you very much for being here tonight, and I hope you'll stay in case there are any questions during our general comment period.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. And that moves us to our general public comment period. And during general public comment, the public is invited to make comments on items of public interest that are within the City Council's subject matter jurisdiction and not listed on the agenda. So public comments are limited to 3 minutes per person, and depending on the number of persons wishing to address the council, time will be allocated in equal shares totaling no more than 20 minutes. If we have more than 20 people wishing to speak, additional comments will be heard after the last business item. And I'll note we only have one public hearing tonight, so it's a good night to have a full house. And so with that, I'd like our clerk to announce both whether we've received any online and proceed with the message.
Yes, we have received 25 general comments, and those are posted online. I also have a number of cards. I believe I have 18 right now. At this time, I will start a 30-second clock for general public comment. During these 30 seconds, members of the public should bring their speaker cards to my desk if they have not already done so. Speaker cards received after this time may not be accommodated.
We have 18 general public comment cards tonight. And the rules allow the mayor a little latitude on that, and I'd like to keep all the speakers immediately, and I would like to set the clock at 90 seconds tonight, 1 minute and 1/2. I will note to the public that 1 minute and 1/2 goes exceedingly fast, and so hitting on your key points will be necessary. And if the key point has been made by others, express a support of what's been previously said, rather than consuming time to repeat what we probably all understand to be important as is. So with that, our first speaker tonight is Clint Gilbert, to be followed by Dominic Fazuzzi, followed by Fred Pachucha. So Clint, first up.
Good evening, council members and mayor. Thank you. My name is Clint Gilbert, and I'm the first of three to be here to present to our Mayor Kevin McDonald. For many years, I chose to stay home on Veterans Day rather than watch the parade. I simply didn't want to be reminded of my time in Vietnam and the war there. That changed when I joined the Santa Rosa chapter for the Veterans for Peace. I finally saw a way to transform that memory into a message of hope, and now I march in solidarity for peace. Veterans for Peace is a global organization of military veterans and allies whose collective efforts are to build a culture of peace by using our experiences and lifting our voices. We inform the public of the true cause of war and the enormous costs of war, with an obligation to heal the wounds of war. Our network is comprised of over 140 chapters worldwide, whose work includes educating the public, advocating for a dismantling of the war economy, providing services that assist veterans and victims of war, and most significantly, working to end all wars. Thank you.
Thank you. Dominic Fazuzzi.
Good evening, council members and mayor. My name is Dominic Favuzzi, and I serve as vice president of the local chapter of Veterans for Peace, Chapter 71. 5 years ago, VFP joined with Rotary with the goal of dedicating a peace pole with the phrase, "May peace prevail on earth," in 8 languages on the campus of every school in Sonoma County. We have done 93 polls thus far, including all the schools in Petaluma. At each dedication, we have the students and teachers recite a peace pledge, which was created by 5th and 6th graders from Santa Rosa. Council members and citizens in the audience, please, if you'd like, repeat after me. I pledge to use my words to speak in a kind way. I pledge to help others as I go throughout my day. I pledge to care for our earth with my healing heart and hands. I pledge to respect people in each and every land. I pledge to join together as we unite the big and small. I pledge to do my part to create peace for one and all. Thank you.
Thank you. And Fred Pachuca.
Fred Pachucha, the president of Veterans for Peace for Sonoma County. I had 4 tours in Vietnam as a naval officer between 1965 and 1970. If that doesn't make you want to work for world peace, nothing will. We have had 93 Peace Bowl dedications, but the one mayor, elected official, is most impressive is Mayor Kevin McDonald. So whereas Petaluma Mayor Kevin McDonald rode his bicycle to attend peace pole dedications at every school in Sonoma and Petaluma, where each pole had the phrase, "May peace prevail on earth," in 8 languages, and were sponsored by Veterans for Peace and local Rotary clubs. Whereas Mayor Kevin McDonald keeps a peace pledge written by 5th and 6th grade students on his screen saver so that it inspires him every day when he opens his computer. Whereas Mayor McDonald came to the defense of Ellen Obstler, a Petaluma mother who was carrying a sign saying, "War is not healthy for children and other living things," as part of the Veterans for Peace entry in the Petaluma Armistice Day Parade, and who was being verbally attacked for being too political. Whereas Mayor McDonald wrote a response to the parade incident that said in part, "Veterans Day is such a fraught holiday. It is intended as a sign of respect for those who have sacrificed for our freedom, yet it is inherently interconnected with war. If it does not conflict our souls,
Thank you, Fred.
we are..."
I'm going to have
And
to.
whereas Mayor McDonald, by
Fred.
his words, actions, represent the best spirit of Petaluma in America.
Fred, that time
and
is
the
up,
value
and
of
as
Veterans
much
for
as
Peace.
I'm flattered by all the comments.
Okay. Therefore, I proclaim Kevin McDonald an honorary member of Veterans for Peace.
Thank you very much.
We all need a role model in life, especially
Okay.
in this time, and that's why I'm here. I wasn't going to come. But
Thank you very,
what's
very
going
much.
on? Kevin's the role model, so
With-
stand up for what he stood up for.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Christine White, to be followed by Jody Johnson.
No. My name is Christine White, so thank you, council members and mayor, for allowing me to speak tonight. First of all, I wanted to thank Council Member Now for your service as vice mayor. I've learned a lot from you during these meetings, and you're always respectful, and your passion for Petaluma is evident. Congratulations, first of all, to Council Member DeCarly. It's hard to call you that. Anyway, for your new position as vice mayor. I'd also like to thank you for speaking out in early January meeting on behalf of your constituents and the citizens of Petaluma regarding the changes that were added at the last minute to the general plan to allow for buildings to go from 6 to 8 stories. Clearly, what the citizens wanted when the referendum by Petaluma Historic Advocates was created was for an opportunity to vote on such huge changes. It's not a yes or a no, it was an opportunity to vote. I'd also like for the council to re-review the parameters that they had if you were going to revisit the ones for the overlay, because the parameters with respect to building heights and what was required were weak at best, especially when it came to recycling and garbage was an option, not a requirement. And lastly, I just appreciate, as they said, for us sitting here and when we come up to speak, to be treated with respect and for not to be called NIMBYs. Thank you.
Thank you. Jody Johnson, to be followed by Janice Barker.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council, and staff. Our bad actor, large investment mobile park owners are doubling and tripling down on retaliations, demands, and misrepresentations to residents, realtors, and communities. As they continue to weaponize the legal system against our residents and our city, they are increasing their elder and vulnerable family abuse in a way that no one should be okay with. Residents of Capri received unlawful demands regarding insurance. Realtors selling in Capri are being told that Harmony has obtained 51% of residents' compliance that they can raise ground rents to fair market value. They are thumbing their nose at the rent stabilization ordinance, the vacancy control, and all protections. We no longer have a 51% rule to go after an attempted increase in ground rent. We have an arbitration system. No doubt the arbitration system is not working for them because simply they haven't been able to prove after 0 awards in 6 arbitrations. We have tried to share with realtors the RSO and the senior park overlays, but park owners are trying to make the demand to the realtor, and in some cases, not allowing the realtor to be present with their client in any park management meeting. Those secret meetings are where egregious harm is done to buyers who have no relevant information before purchase. Our residents went to the state capitol to testify to SB 722, which is the cleanup to SB 79. The intent of SB 79 and housing around transit was never to make mobile home
Thank
park
you.
residents
Janice
vulnerable.
Barker, to be followed by Jennifer Boyle.
Good evening. Our residents were applauded by the Senate Committee of Local Governments for organizing and sharing relevant information. Senator Calderon even stated that we mobile park residents have been let down in many jurisdictions, but of course we feel we have not been let down by our city, who stands for the truth, the facts, and for the most vulnerable. Capri residents received last week an annual packet from Harmony with a demand for home insurance. There is no relevant MRL code attached, as is required by the state now. There can be no demand from a park owner for a mobile home owned by the residents. Insurance must be maintained by lending institutions, but that is between the resident owner and the lending institution. We must bring your attention to Angel from Little Woods again. In the first arbitration, it was discovered that Angel had been abused with an MLS listing ground rent that showed $499 turning into almost $1,300 of ground rent. If that wasn't bad enough, we now see Angel has received a 4.46% increase last year, and while his fellow neighbors received the 1.1% allowable increase. When addressed to Harmony, Emily Croder, Junior Regional Property Manager.
Thank you very much. Jennifer Boyle, to be followed by Tim Porteous.
Good evening. When addressed to Harmony, Emily Corder, Junior Regional Property Manager for Harmony, stated that it was because he had signed a long-term lease in 2023. Not only was this not allowed starting January 2025 because of AB 2782, but Angel never even knew he had signed a long-term lease because he was never given an option. In fact, all mobile park residents in Petaluma are protected under rent stabilization as it comes to annual allowable increases or pass-throughs. Youngstown Park Management continues to sell to all ages and has saturated the listings of 12 Michael Drive, 29 Pamela Drive, 132 Pamela Court online as all ages, while a senior park overlay zoning in effect from October 2023 remains and litigation plays out. They defraud potential buyers into believing this is an all-age park. Little Woods residents, while facing no parking, closure processes.
Thank you. Tim Porteous, to be followed by Wayne Clark.
Little Woods residents, while facing no parking, closure, possess, and now 7-day notices, feel no relief from any of this opposition by park owners. We lift our voices quietly, but we will not submit to the injustices that continue to happen. Every check and balance to park owners and management is met with their business plan motto, "We will do whatever we want," against any MRL or city ordinance. We will bury you in legal debt and make you submit. Park management will come after a resident for too many potted plants. Something is very wrong with this very one-sided accountability. Our residents, we're not going to quit. We'll keep coming. Petaluma Mobile Residents United Strong. This is all true. Everything, and many of you know already, the awful cruelty that these animals are putting upon us. And thank you for your help in trying to fight these animals. We really need you, and you're really showing up. Thank you.
Thank you. Wayne Clark, to be followed by Darren Rakusin.
Oops, pardon me, Dwayne.
Okay, howdy, folks. Got to go really quick. I'm back, Karen. Little thing. I'm Canadian, boots on the ground, Vietnam, stage 4 cancer survivor. Okay, I work on everything that moves. Okay, and I appreciate this city like big time, unlike some people in this room. This is what we've been doing with ICE. We're at the overpass, 101 overpass. We're on Saturday at the crossroads, and we had an incredible turnout on Thursday at 4 o'clock over at Lake Casey. We need to stand in solidarity with Minneapolis, Minnesota. And I really appreciate the Petaluma Stands United Against Hate. Did Trump get the memo? I don't think so. You know, he is, oh yeah, pure hate. And it's just like, what a wake-up call. Okay, we're talking about ICE agents, okay? They're probably all Proud Boys, Oath Keepers, 3%ers, or definitely MAGA. Like our Petaluma police are incredible. The fire department, what is happening? Why is Minnesota's police department being overridden? 5 times more ICE agents. It's crazy. Incompetent. The whole I'm sorry, Mr. Bush, W. Trump's, you couldn't have a more incompetent.
Thank you. I'm going to ask that we, it's for items of council subject matter discretion. I have to tell you that. And so any comments you make have to be related to what Petaluma can be doing and doing better. But your time has expired, so thank you very much for this evening.
And I know you'll do a great job.
And our next speaker is Darren Rakusin, to be followed by Jody Kleinsmith.
Thank you, Council and City Clerk. I came to general public comment to bring up a point that I found from reviewing the city's quarterly expense reports. I encourage anybody watching or listening to go and review those if you want more insight into the finances and expenses of the city. There's a convenient report every quarter that breaks out where every dollar is spent. But one of the items that I came across that doesn't quite have the level of granularity I think we need is the Cal Card purchases. So Cal Card is kind of a discretionary spending credit card that employees get to make purchases in the course of operations. Fiscal year 23 and 24, the purchases totaled $991,000. And in 24-25, it was $1.35 million. Now, I assume those are all on budgetary items for operational reasons. But on this report, we're seeing payments to those credit cards, not the expenses that make up those balances, right? So it's the only item on there that doesn't really show what the expense was for. It just shows we're paying a card off. And I think the dollar amounts are significant enough where I don't know how those reports could be modified, if there could be an attachment that shows those Cal Card spending reports, or maybe if there's any commentary about the internal controls, how those are managed, you know, how those, because it doesn't go through the normal procurement process, I would imagine. It's kind of employees' discretion. So just what the city's controls are on that, and if any more details could be offered. Thank you.
Thank you. Jody Kleinsmith, to be followed by Kathy Fico.
Hi, my name is Jody Kleinsmith, and I'm here to talk about the recent closure of Kavanaugh Pool. The pool is an important resource for many of the most vulnerable people in our city. Parks and Recs have chosen to close it during the winter when other outdoor activities are difficult for some. Many of the senior attendees have health issues that are greatly reduced with the warm water at Kavanaugh. They have also made swimming lessons for young children unavailable. I know my kids wouldn't go into the colder water at the swim center. Risk assessment people from the city's liability insurance came and looked at the pool recently, and they have decided that we need an extra lifeguard at Kavanaugh Pool, even though it's extremely small. Liz Evers, who has managed the pool for 16 years, has had the same liability insurance coverage for the last 10 years. She's been told recently that she would have to purchase new insurance coverage that would cost her about $25,000 more per year. I was a corporate controller for most of my career, responsible for purchasing liability insurance. It seems to me that the city will have to purchase this insurance regardless and would get better rates than an individual. I'm wondering if Liz could keep her current coverage and the city could purchase an umbrella policy as well as pay for the additional lifeguard, and then we could get the pool back open. I think the general consensus is that Liz does a fantastic job, and I'm heartsick about losing her. Thank you.
Thank you. Kathy Fico. Kathy Fico to be followed by Thomas Jeff Bradley.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Kathy Fico. I'm a lifelong Petaluma resident, retired nurse with over 50 years' experience in emergency and community nursing and leadership. Kavanaugh Pool has been a part of my life for a very long time. What occurs at Kavanaugh goes far beyond exercise. It's a safe, accessible, and welcoming space, especially for older adults, people with disabilities, and those managing medical conditions. It supports our physical health, mental health, and social connection. It reduces isolation and builds community. For some, like my husband, it's the only form of exercise he can do due to spinal stenosis. Likewise, for others who are recuperating from fractures, knee replacements, osteoarthritis, or frailty. That is why the abrupt 48-hour notice of closure with no explanation and no prior engagement with us, the community, was totally wrong and deeply distressing and disheartening. The city knew as early as last year that it planned to take overall pool. If the city knew as early as last year it planned to take overall pool programming operations, I must ask, why wasn't a staffing plan already in place? Why wasn't additional staff recruited or reassigned to ensure a smooth transition? And why did this result in sudden closure instead of continuity? What are your plans and how can we be involved in decision-making? I also want to be clear the Washington Street Swim Center is not a viable option. We do water aerobics, not lap swimming, and all of us require water temps above 83 degrees.
And the next speaker is Thomas Jeff Bradley, to be followed by Linda Spiel.
Hello, my name is Jeff Bradley. I live locally. I am a proud Petaluman, and I'm talking about the Kavanaugh closure too, which happened so suddenly with so little warning. The pool was closed Friday. We found out Wednesday, I believe. I had the great fortune of having my now 95-year-old neighbor across the street tell me about it when I retired and I was having health problems. As has been said, it is so much more than just an exercise program. It's a wonderful thing. I know some of you have come to the pool. Besides Christina's exercise classes, which were not without equal, what they call free self-guided, so much happens. And it is a vulnerable group of people who get together. Friendships, hardships, death, all the problems of life are met in those warm waters with warm hearts. It's what Petaluma talks about with blue zones and trying to promote the community we want. I can't believe a solution can't be found either. The insurance is going to have to be bought one way or the other. I think it's absurd, having been a lifeguard myself, that this small pool needs a lifeguard and an instructor. I think if the insurance company is asking for that, we need to look at a different insurance company. Many people are feeling lost and abandoned. I'm glad Parks and Rec, Drew and others came out on Friday, a day late, but came out and met people and talked to them. Unfortunately, I couldn't be there. So I'm saying, please find the will to find the answer and don't close this pool. And the swim lessons are so important in the TOT program as well, and there is no alternative. Thank you.
Thank you. Linda Spiel to be followed by Judy Sorrell.
Hi, can you hear me? Thank you for letting me speak. And I'm another pool lady, and I was shocked to have the pool being closed. And I've been going for over 20 years, and we've always had a lifeguard there. It's a small pool. It doesn't need 2 lifeguards. That's crazy. And I just request that you really think about this and give it back. Thank you.
Thank you. Judy Sorrell to be followed by Lucy Vitale.
Hi, my name's Judy Savell. I'm a retired teacher, taught in Petaluma for 22 years, and I'm a regular at Kavanaugh. I think it's important for us to look at buckets. Chris Rebilo, I'm not sure how to say her last name, but
You got
she's
it.
a chairman of a committee that studies these things. And she said that she would, in an Argus Courier article, said that one of her goals is that we don't put elders in buckets. We look at them individually. What are their individual needs? And I would like to stress that many of us at Kavanaugh cannot go to the colder pool because we have doctors diagnosed conditions that the warm water does not trigger them, but the cold water does. And that means that if we go to the colder big pool, that we're going to be less healthy, not more healthy. And that's why we're all so devastated. We need our warmer pool. It's not a big pool. I know it costs to heat it, but it's not a very big pool. We can't heat the big one that way. So this is an incredible resource that our community has, and I hate to see it shut down even temporarily. Our 95-year-old wonderful Anne comes every day. She can't go to the big pool. It won't work for her.
Thank you very
Thank
much. Lucy Vitale to be followed by Sherry McClendon.
Greetings. Hello. I'm going to skip the beginning since I don't have as much time as I expected to have, but my husband and I moved here in 2017 to Petaluma. We love it here. One of the reasons we chose Petaluma as our new home, moving back to this area after being gone for 30 years, was this legendary swimming culture here in this town. And the Blue Zone, the Cool Block initiatives, Petaluma's commitment to public transportation, cycling and walkability, all those things. Yes, Kavanaugh Pool, the cherry on top. As you can see, I am a proud Petaluma Kavanaugh Pool peep. And I have been an enthusiastic participant at the Kavanaugh Pool since before moving here. I've enjoyed aerobics and yoga classes in the pool, as well as self-guided exercise at the minimum of 3 times a week for many years. During this time, I've also cultivated friendships with the pool peeps, our cherished impromptu swim club. I like to call them my Cavanistas, too. I credit those warm healing waters to helping me deal with an old knee injury and subsequent total joint replacement. The rehab in the warm pool was part of my success, as was the support and empathy from others who had experienced similar issues. Last, as a former educator, I must champion the children's programming at Kavanaugh. The disruption to the toddler and youth lessons already filled and including a waiting list is unacceptable. Comparing those two pools is like comparing apples to oranges. I beg you to reconsider.
Thank you. Sherry McClendon to be followed by Chantel Rogers.
Hi. Nice to see you all. I think the biggest piece, I'm also talking about the Kavanaugh Pool, is that, if we look right over here, it's saying this is what the goals of Petaluma are. I've lived here for almost 50 years now. By the way, there are usually 4 nurses in that pool, 4 retired nurses at a time. It's kind of hilarious. We make fun of it. Also, of those nurses, 2 of them, including myself, used to be lifeguards. So the whole thing is rather absurd. Now, let's talk collaboration, please. How did this come down to 3 days, get out of the pool? What? I mean, I'm talking gray power here, okay, at this point. And I'll talk about bald power for our little babies. What? I mean, this is truly one of the most absurd things that Petaluma has done, and I adore Petaluma, believe me, I've had so many people move here. If we want a blue zone and we want to support our elders and our youngsters and the people that live here in Petaluma, it is about not being isolated. It is about being healthy, having exercise, and that can happen in this pool for truly next to nothing.
Thank you very
Let's
much.
work on collaboration so
Our
we can
next
figure
speaker.
this out. Got it. Thank
Got
you.
it. It's Chantel Rogers.
Good evening. I'm going to talk about the pool too, but I'm going to highlight the loss of the swim lessons for children. With the children's swim lessons being canceled and no swim lessons at the larger pool, we no longer have public pool swim lesson options for children. Not all families are in a position to take private lessons, join a club, or have some other alternative. So for me, it's really an equity issue in terms of working families having access to something that's not only a childhood rite of passage, but a really critical skill for our children to be able to master, to be water safe, and to continue in their development. I mean, Petaluma has had swim lessons at the Kavanaugh Center for generations. Maybe some of your kids learned to swim at the swim center. I know mine did. And maybe even you younger council people learned to swim there yourselves. It's really something that I feel is a big loss and an unacceptable turn of events. And I really hope something can be figured out so we can bring back the swim lessons for our kids. Thank you.
Thank you. And that closes our public comment, and I do want to thank our Sonoma Water reps for staying with us to this. And with public comment closed on that, I think there isn't anybody on the council dais who doesn't know that Kavanaugh is a real gem in the community. And I'd like to ask our city manager if she could say a few words addressing the Kavanaugh closure.
Thank you, Mayor, Council, community, and staff. Before I ask Drew to speak, I wanted to address the closure of the pool. We recognize, and as you've noted tonight, that Kavanaugh and its programs are deeply valued by our community, and we fully recognize that this interruption is frustrating and upsetting for those who depend on the facility, and we want to acknowledge that direct impact. The closure was driven by one overriding concern, that was community safety, and staff are working very closely to explore solutions, but unfortunately those efforts didn't produce an immediate or workable resolution with our current service provider. We really regret the disruption of the closure has caused and are working really quickly to reopen the facility. And in the meantime, our Parks and Rec team, as Drew will talk about, with the full support of my office and our citywide team, are ensuring that existing swim memberships, classes are honored, and wherever possible, current programming will be accommodated currently at the Petaluma Swim Center, but very quickly at the Kavanaugh pool. Staff will also continue working with the Kavanaugh patrons to accommodate their needs during this transition. We are grateful to Liz and Forever's Aquatics for running these programs and facilities and serving our community, especially during a time when the city wasn't financially able to bring those services in-house. We are also grateful to the community for your support of these programs and facilities. We recognize the community connection that occurs at these facilities, and that's why we are really trying to make sure that when we reopen Kavanaugh, that there's a refresh and then a corresponding capital improvement budget for improvements that are sorely needed at that facility. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Drew to add more detail. Thank you.
Thank you, City Manager Flynn. Good evening, City Council, Mayor, community, and I'll keep kind of looking back at our Kavanaugh community. I'm sorry that I'll have my back to you most of the time, but thank you. I know this has been a really hard week, and I know we were just scratching the surface with some of your testimonies here tonight about what this pool means to you and how important it is to get it reopened in a way that brings it back to be the value that you all see in it. So I was taking some notes during public comment. I just want to provide a couple of responses for the council who have also had a lot of questions, rightfully so. I know there were a few details shared last Wednesday, and that's where I want to start, is just apologize to this community for that. The messaging that initially went out, did not stress that this is a temporary closure, did not provide much details about why. And this was always, I think, maybe a fear among the community that the city would transition, and that would somehow mean closures, not opening. And I wanted to start by saying, I own that, and this did not roll out the way that I intended it to. And we can go through a little bit of reasons why we're here, but I do want to focus on reassuring you all of our 100% commitment to reopening the Kavanaugh Pool. We are not in the business as someone who's worked in community services, who works with our dedicated team every day. We are not in the business of closing pools and restricting access to recreation. And we fully understand and appreciate it is not just the physical well-being of the pool, it is the community. It's the social connections. It's all of the culture that you have helped create to make Kavanaugh what it is. And that's what we're committed to maintaining, is to allow you all to go back there and have that space. Again, being committed to reopening Kavanaugh Pool, maintaining the atmosphere that you have set, not making drastic changes, but sustaining the program that exists there now. Those are the goals. We care about this community. We're passionate about what we do. We are talking about temporary closure in the matter of weeks, not months. And I know it was abrupt, and for that, again, we apologize. I want to address a couple of points that we made. The insurance requirements has not changed since the original agreement with Forever's Aquatics. I think what has changed is the ability for third-party operators to obtain that insurance. We're not seeing any other regions, any other jurisdictions that manage public pools able to do that through private public partnerships. So our insurance requirements, again, have not changed, but it is becoming increasingly hard to get that insurance. And we are fortunately in a position where our insurance model allows us to absorb that along a consortium of other cities. And we recognize that's a challenge for these providers. That's not without an effort from Liz, and that's not anything that she's done without trying to make it work. And we, of course, did not want to close under these circumstances. It is imperative that we maintain one dedicated staff of a lifeguard with the sole responsibility for surveillance at the pool at all times. And that's the difference here. We want to keep this pool open, and the best way I know how to do that is to make sure that we are holding that requirement so that we're able to keep our insurance, we're able to keep that pool open. We understand how silly that sounds when you have RNs in the pool, you've got doctors and nurses there, and you have certified instructors that are also teaching. But this is really the most important requirement that we have for us to be able to reopen that pool and sustain it being open through perpetuity. This is also a really poor way of reintroducing our staff to the community. I know we haven't been there. We've been happy being behind the scenes. So this is the last way we wanted to reintroduce ourselves to you all. So we are just here to put names behind the faces. Again, we can't go backwards to re-message and engage you when we should have. But moving forward, we commit to more direct dialogue with you, more readily updates, and again, committing to phased reopening in the matter of weeks, not months, and continuing to update you on our progress as we go. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions from the council, and again, appreciate the opportunity tonight.
Thank you very much for that explanation. hadn't really intended to open it to questions, but if there, and I'm sure that as we move into council comments, council will offer their thoughts
Thank you.
loudly. I appreciate you being in the House and appreciate the city manager addressing this issue. And I think all of us look forward to a rapid reopening of this critical program for our community. Thank you. I'd like to bring it up for council comments now. We've gotten lax over time. I keep saying we should be 3 minutes of council comments as we demand of the public, and we only give the public 90 seconds. But so for this meeting, I'd like to set the clock and keep the council on their 3 minute straight and tidy here. And I'd like to start with Council Member Shribs with any report you have of the period since our last meeting.
Okay, first off, I am part of the Petaluma Wetlands Alliance for over 20 years. We provide a lot of service to the city, helping maintain Schollenberger Park. We recently went out and did some cleanup over at Ellis Creek, and we've done the kiosks, and I'm working on the QR codes for the trail. But there's lots of tourism. It's a burning hot spot, and lots of folks come for tourism and walk around to support that. So, sorry, about 6 years ago, we wrote a Petaluma Wetlands Field Guide. And it just turns out this one's hot off the press. This is the 3rd edition, hot off the press as of this last week. And so I provided a copy for everyone up here, but it's now going to be available at Copperfields and other places here around town for anybody who wants to go birding out there or identify the plants. Of course, I actually did all the plants, and all my photographs are in here too. So I'm co-author, by the way, too. So I have to say that. Anyway, so that's just a recent thing. Anyway, so take a look at that and go out to Schollenberger Park and take a walk. And with your field guide, of course. Anyway, there's a couple meetings I attended, the Climate Action Committee. We're going to be moving to every other month meetings, and then going to be doing lots of advocacy to support all what we already have in motion. I also attended the groundwater sustainability meeting, and not a whole lot of events there, but that was just business as usual. At the trees meeting, I went and visited that. The urban forestry management plan is on its way. It's going to be very high goals, but it's still going to be a bit loose, and so I'll be supporting that coming down the line. We need a new technical manual, and lots of complaints about the lollipopping of trees around town. Lots happening. Maybe we can do something about that. I'll talk to staff a little bit about what we can do. And then I'll be attending on Saturday a conference at UC Davis on the Planning and Conservation League. Anybody wants to ask me a question or ask them a question, I can carry the question and bring it back on that. And with that, I'm done ahead of time.
And thank you very much, Councilmember Quint.
Thank you. I want to just express my thanks for the community coming out tonight and advocating for the Kavanaugh Pool, and I hope that we can get that reopened as soon as possible. I also attended the latest Transit Advisory Committee, where we received a presentation on service adjustments, service adjustment options to address the upcoming budget shortfall that's expected in the coming budget. So if you're interested in that, there will be, I believe February will be a follow-up to that. So if it's a topic that you're interested in, I would encourage you to pay attention. I want to take a moment, particularly in light of the events that have unfolded in Minneapolis over the last couple of weeks, and just recognize the Petaluma Police Department. I want to begin, with this positive note on our community's public safety. I've seen firsthand the professionalism, the respect, and commitment that our Petaluma Police Department brings to their work. PPD exemplifies community-centered policing that prioritizes both safety and dignity. I was honored to attend a recent swearing-in ceremony for a new peace officer, a new community service officer, and a new dispatcher. All 3 of these new employees are graduates of Casa Grande High School, which is a testament to the value that our department places on this community and homegrown talent. This kind of recruitment service reflects well on Petaluma and helps build trust between law enforcement and residents. And I want to say Thank you to the officers, the staff, and the volunteers who work every day to keep our city safe. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Now.
Thank you to all that came out tonight to share your concerns. And please feel free to call or email me to further discuss your concerns. I appreciate all of you for taking your time to being here tonight. And I understand the frustrations of a limited time at the podium for public comment. And your telling of these personal stories, I know many have left, but it touches my heart because this is why we love Petaluma so much. In the past few weeks, I have made time to meet with community members in person, listen to their concerns and ideas for the future in Petaluma. Congratulations to the newly sworn in police department officers and dispatchers. I attended the badge ceremony along with the mayor and council member Quint last week. It's always a wonderful opportunity to meet the family members, friends, and the Petaluma Police Department staff and volunteers behind the law enforcement staff members who keep us safe daily. Every 2 years during the last 10 days of January, communities across the country conduct a point-in-time count to measure how many people are experiencing homelessness in their area. The PIT count provides only a national-wide snapshot of both sheltered and unsheltered homelessness. Local PIT counts will take place on Friday morning at COTS. This effort is required by the U.S. Department of Housing Urban Development, otherwise known as HUD, for all communities that receive federal funding to support housing and services for people experiencing homelessness. By volunteering for this PIT count, I will gather valuable information that highlights local needs and support efforts to improve housing and service areas across the county. This is something totally out of my comfort zone and very early in the morning, but it's so needed to get the correct count on our unhoused population. This is something I have learned so much already about, thanks to our mayor and former council member Dennis Posake, about our unhoused population in our community. And this year will be challenging for funding, but together in the county coalition, we are determined to find solutions. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Barnacle.
Thank you for everybody for coming tonight. I agree. It's unfortunate. The timing is terrible, and we do make mistakes. And I'm hopeful. I'm certain that we will take the steps we need to reopen the pool because, of course, we know that it's important for the recreational, the exercise, the social, all of that. We have an aging population, and part of that is making sure that resources like the pool remain open and remain a resource for our community. So thank you for coming here tonight and speaking up. And I want you to know that I personally support it, and that I know our staff does, and I fully trust that our staff are going to do everything they can to reopen it as fast as can. I also want to take a moment tonight to just speak about what we're seeing across the country. I think what we're seeing in Minnesota is a blueprint for what we're probably going to see elsewhere. And I think we need to take it as a warning sign and a blueprint for how we can prepare. We were alarmed when the campaign promised mass deportations. And although they framed it as the worst of the worst, what we've actually seen is very different. What we've seen is actually this is about quotas, intimidation, and rhetoric. Farms, job sites, schools, places of worships, and even homes are no longer safe. People are being detained without proper warrants and deported without due process. It's unconstitutional and it's abhorrent. Now we're witnessing U.S. citizens being killed by federal enforcement actions, followed by our federal government covering for them. This is how civil rights erode, not all at once, but step by step. History shows us what happens when we wait too long to act. I fear that it's only a matter of time before Petaluma is on the list of places where ICE is going to be. I want to be sure that our city attorney looks into laws, strengthening our laws to make sure that we have all the legal backing to take corrective actions after. I don't think that they're going to stop anything here, but I want to make sure that we have the ability to prosecute people, anyone who's involved in this stuff. I want to make sure that we have the ability to seek civil penalties for anything that we can. And I also think it's important that as community members, we all start looking to build the community networks and the decentralized resource and mutual aid that we're seeing out in Minnesota right now. It's a good time to start looking at the nonprofits that are doing this. I'm not going to name them right now, but you can look around and find them, because when this comes here, we're all going to need to step up and be as passionate as we are about this pool in support of our immigrant communities and everybody else. This is about protecting our neighbors, our constitutional rights, and the rule of law. And I hope that we all step up in this time, because it's not going to go away until it goes away. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Cater Thompson.
Thank you. And Councilmember Barnacle, I appreciate everything that you stated on that. And for me, this is like 1933 Germany. And the brown shirts came in. They came in and just beat people up. And this was my family. My great-grandparents on both sides, my aunts, uncles, cousins, they never made it back to this country because they were all murdered. And that's what is happening in our country today. This is a replica of what's happening, and it can happen in Petaluma. And I'm very concerned that our police can do what they're supposed to be doing, and you don't have to step aside for these thugs coming in. This is not policing, and it's very disturbing. The blueprint started a long time ago, and we are here. And I personally am not surprised at what I'm seeing, but I'm horrified by it. And with that, I'm going to go to the Kavanaugh pool. Kavanaugh is near and dear to my heart. A lot of the people that were here, I do recognize your faces, but you look different because usually we all have swimsuits on when we're at Kavanaugh.
And it's not pretty.
And well, it's not pretty. And Chantel, I actually took my first swim lessons at Kavanaugh pool. And my husband is a lifeguard there. And so he's, the self-guidance is there because Jerry is there all the time playing his music, as Kathy, wrote to me and said, this is a family. And people come because they feel comfortable there. They like each other, and after they get out of the pool, people just sit around and actually chat, and they want to make sure that everybody's okay. Kind of like our mobile home park friends. It's the same thing. It's just a different activity. I am very disappointed in what happened, probably the most disappointed up here. I feel as though the way this came down was really unacceptable, and today it's unacceptable. I think the pool should be open unless we have a real time frame. Is it going to be opened in 2 weeks? I want to know when this is going to happen, because there's plenty of lifeguards to open that pool tomorrow. And I know everybody that was working there would step up and work to make sure that that pool was open for our community. And then we should have a plan of what is the plan. I don't even know what the plan is, and I'd like to know what that plan is. And so my personal opinion is we need to go backwards. We need to reopen that pool, and we need to respect what the public is saying. They're not going to go to the big pool because it is way too cold. That's just not what an older body likes, and it's not going to work. And I'm going for more than 3 minutes. And I just think that we need an answer. This was a real failure, and it failed a lot of different people. So I'd like an answer. I'm not going to get one tonight, but I would like to see that pool open and then restart and have an actual plan, because I think the plan was that there were going to be changes. People knew there was going to be changes, and we need to go back to the time frame of those changes, and that was in summer, I believe. Could have been fall, early in the spring. But whatever the time frame was, this is not it. And so I'm really suggesting that we reopen this and go back to what we were doing with a plan to close it. So the city's going to take over, or whatever the plan is, but the council doesn't even know the plan. And I'd like to know that. And I do want to thank everybody who came and spoke. Been there many times with all of you, and we are a family, just like I say our mobile home park. And I'm not done. I was at this last week in Sacramento at a League of California Cities conference, and I'm on the Cal Cities Community Service Policy Committee, and the hot topic was AI, and I really would like to understand AI, how it actually works within the city. I mean, there's just, it goes so many different layers, and it's really to protect us as council members from not using devices that have AI hooked up to it. I mean, there's just so much to this, and I don't understand a lot, but I learned a lot at this conference. In March, we'll be having
wrapping it up.
another policy committee discussing more about this, but there's also other issues coming up with the environmental policy meeting and just the cost of PG&E and what's going to be happening with solar, and the public has a right to know. And I'm not quite done, Kevin, sorry.
Yeah, but we're going to try a new policy this year,
Well,
right?
you might have another policy, but Kavanaugh came up, and there was a lot of other things to talk about. And the other thing is that I had an event at my home for Congressman Mike Thompson, because the east side, that is now his district because of the changes. And 54 people came. It was a good attendance, but my house is small. But I really appreciate the council members that did come and listen to him. And there's going to be changes. So
Thank
you for giving me the time.
Okay. Vice Mayor DeCarli.
Good evening, everyone. I have no liaison reports tonight. Our last Parks and Rec meeting got canceled for January, and so that was the only one I had. Last Friday, attended Native Sons Polenta and Stew Feed. That's a wonderful event, community event that helped raise thousands of dollars for children with cleft palates. They do that every year, and they've been doing that for a long, long time. So that's a really great community thing to help children. And so now I'd like to talk about the Petaluma Peeps and what happened to them last week. And thank you for loaning me the hat. I'm happy to support you all. And first of all, I appreciate that so many of you come tonight to speak and support each other. You know, I must say that I am sorry for what has happened to you all. This was not any of your fault, yet you were the ones that suffered from the decisions made. And I don't think it's fair that you be the fall guy, Drew. The closure of the pool came as a big surprise to me last week, as I was first made aware of it by the community. I'm concerned, and I believe all my colleagues are as well, about the abrupt decision made and how vital the pool is to all of you, not only because your fellow swimmers are your family, but also swimming and services that were offered are essential to your health and well-being. We should be building trust in our community. Instead, we have a room full of understandably upset and frustrated and hurt residents. I don't find the sudden closure and the manner in which it was done acceptable. This makes us look bad as a city and breaks that essential trust with the community. This was all preventable. However, the city now has a good opportunity to not only restore the use of the pool as quickly as possible, but to also see to it that all the Petaluma Peeps with special medical needs that need to keep swimming during the week are taken care of in the interim.
Thank you very much. I also want to thank everybody for being here tonight and speaking on the Kavanaugh issue. I think we've heard a strong consensus that we want a solution here. I do want to appreciate that staff has owned the communication problem that existed, and now I think I'm hearing a guarantee that they're owning the restoration and fix for the pool, so and staffing to get it back open for those who need it. I'm also truly touched by all the Veterans for Peace who came tonight. At every peace pole installation throughout the school district, I continue to be moved by the experiences, their memories of war. And we have to continue to listen and hear all those with lived experience and wisdom. So a big thanks to them. Last Monday, there was no council meeting. That's why we're on the this week's cycle. And it was in honor and in respect of Martin Luther King Day. However, I received many messages of how individuals and groups chose to celebrate. And most impressive were those who chose to get out and do work projects in the community, and for those less fortunate, whether they were volunteering at COTS or cleaning up on the river. It's that kind of community effort that makes Petaluma the special place that we all know and love. I attended several business organizations meetings to hear their concerns in this past 2 weeks. I met with interfaith groups to discuss community building and the benefits that brings to all of us. And I met with the interns that are here in town from AmeriCorps, and then with council member now, met with other mayors and elected from all over the county to see how we can better organize and better affect solutions in the homelessness sector, because that's such a huge problem. Though it was down 20% over the last couple of years, we'd see it's already rising, and this point in time count that she's participating in is a critical effort. And then just one more note, we are now currently taking applications at the city for all our committees and commissions, or a variety of which have openings at this point in time. And you can of course, get forms from our clerk, or I believe we have them in the back of the room even tonight, if you're interested in being on one of the committees and commissions that has openings here tonight. So I'm thinking the city manager is our next report up. Is there any, we're good on that front? I'm sorry, one other note. I do want to appreciate Councilmember Barnacle's points about, all the actions that are happening nationally, and how everything that happens nationally happens in Petaluma either first or sooner or later. And so those things are critical. And locally, we have North Bay Rapid Response, and I hope everybody become familiar with who they are and what they support in this times. And then I just want to note that I admire the Minneapolis mayor's leadership. That's not the kind of crisis any of us wants thrust on them, and we question how would we stand in the face of such actions. And that brings us to our consent calendar for the evening. Moving on to the consent calendar for the evening. And so that gives us a little chance to stretch legs for those who are heading out.
Would you like some water?
All right, the consent calendar for the evening. And for the consent calendar, as we start the discussion here, eight items on it, I'd like to invite our assistant city attorney, our city manager, to Brian Cochran, to make announcements regarding item 8.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Council. Wanted to do a quick verbal report out on the changes that are anticipated for Unit 8 under item number 8 on our agenda, so that we are in full compliance with the government code that requires us to do such report outs. Very little is changing in this compensation plan. Just for clarity, our Unit 8 staff are all of our department heads as well as our assistant city attorneys. So that's the universe of employees we're talking about. The only changes that are proposed are to extend the compensation plan for one additional fiscal year. So it would be running through June 30, 2027. There is a 0% cost of living adjustment proposed. So essentially no cost of living adjustment proposed. And other than that, there are a few administrative cleanup wording changes. But other than that, no changes proposed.
Thank you very much for that input. And then I'd like to look up and down the dais and see if any council members, any item they need to pull from the consent in total.
I've got questions about item 3.
Well, let's do questions next. Not seeing any item being taken separately, then let's have council questions on the consent calendar in total. And I'll start with our vice mayor.
Thank you. So in looking at the report for item 3, versus what was approved to, what's now proposed, there's a massive increase in cost there. And so it's, we've got admin going from 5,000 to 150,000, planning going from 600,000 to $1 million, and then contingency costs exceeding an extra $1 million. And so I'm wondering, from when this was originally approved, what has now changed and where is that money going to come from?
Do we have staff available to answer the questions?
Hi, Paul Gagan, Senior Project Manager with CIP. So initially, the previous budget was a preliminary estimate. The plans for the project weren't fully developed. We had what we call a rough order of magnitude of what the cost is. We have to put our best foot forward and assume what the costs are going to be. Since that time, we have obviously completed the plans of what they are. And there's been some substantial increases in the project scope. The project is going all electric. That's not the only reason. While we're still going through it, we learned that we had to upgrade the whole electrical system in any case, and we are going all electric. That did add cost. But one of the big items you're seeing there is the contingency number. And what that equates to is this is a historic building. It's 100 years old. There's a lot of asbestos and lead in the building. We're very limited when we're doing our destructive testing of what we can actually open up. It's an active forestation with people working there. When we break open a wall that has lead, that's bad for the area. The asbestos can get into the atmosphere, and we have to protect the firefighters from that. So basically, we can only do very small amounts of testing. So we're limited to see what's actually behind those finished surfaces. So what we're trying to do here is make a bucket of money available that during construction, if we run into these issues, we can pull from it. Instead of the project running out of money, us halting halfway through and then having to come back to council and try and get more money appropriated to finish the project. All we're saying is we want to have a bucket of money here that we're not intending to spend, but if we have to, it's readily available and we can pull from it and keep the project moving forward. So that's the big increase on the contingency side of things.
Okay, so it's primarily along, at least the contingency part of it is primarily along the lines of asbestos?
Asbestos is a big one, asbestos and lead, but it's also a building that is 100 years old. We don't know when we pull down some finishes that we haven't been able to remove because, like I say, it's an active building. We may find dry rot in some structural beams that need to be addressed. That can be a very expensive operation to run new steel girders across a building while supporting it at the same time. That's a huge cost increase. Also, we could see problems with the footings, the foundation. These could be all gigantic problems that we have to deal with. So the smart thing to do is to put some money aside in a bucket and not say we're going to spend it somewhere else in the city, just to have it sitting there as a placeholder. Hopefully we don't need it, but if we do, it's there and it's available and we can keep the project moving forward.
Mm-hmm. And where do we know at this point where it's about $1.6, $1.7 million where it's going to come from?
I can't speak to the funding portion. Do you want to speak to that?
Yeah, so we have just started our CIP planning for 26-27. This is a little bit complicated because the project is going to span multiple fiscal years, but we have identified Measure H revenues as essentially what will cover that gap. So that will be likely, it's not 100%, but it will likely be the main source that will be covering that initial contingency that Paul just explained. Okay. And Measure H is the new dedicated tax for fire equipment and personnel. Similar funding source that will be used for a portion of the new public safety building.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and it did mention that this is being done alongside the mid-year budget update, but we haven't seen that yet. And so, is staff confident that this will work?
Yes, and especially because only a portion of the project is going to land in the current fiscal year. So when we bring those budget adjustments, we'll true up the project budgeting for this fiscal year for what we think is going to be spent in this fiscal year. And then subsequently, as we bring the CIP workshop and the CIP budgeting for next fiscal year, that will be synced up with the remaining project expenses that will fall in the next year.
Thank you.
Can I just add a little follow-up question there? Is the project going to go into a third fiscal year as well? Or does the contract complete in the coming fiscal year?
It's a 12-month contract. That's the period we're looking at. So the target is to be complete in March 2027.
Do like seeing things complete. Yeah.
That's the plan.
Thank you. Other questions on the consent calendar? Councilmember Barnacle?
I have a question. We received a letter and then we received a response. Thank you for the response. Have we looked into verify the claims from both parties in the letter?
So we have spoken with staff and reviewed the correspondence, and based on that review, which we only had time to do today, I do not see anything in the letter that we received from Local 751 that, first of all, it's not a bid protest. It wouldn't be timely, and the local doesn't have standing to submit one. It really seems to be focused at raising questions about Mid-State's responsibility based on some information that's for which we're not given much in the way of specifics regarding past Mid-State projects and in particular prevailing wage compliance. Then we received a response from Mid-State arguing that there's no pending issues for them with respect to prevailing wage compliance, that we know that they're not disbarred because staff have reviewed that to confirm. And also there's some information Mid-State provided about their what's referred to as their XMOD or their claim experience or history that they provided. And so they insist in their correspondence that there's no responsibility issues with respect to Mid-State and their ability to carry out the project. What I can tell the council in terms of procedures that apply to award of a public works contract like this is, since this is not a bid protest and doesn't come from an entity that's eligible to provide one, and since this is a project subject to competitive bidding under our charter and also state law, and staff have determined that the Mid-State bid is the lowest responsive bid, and since we have no, including the information that we've seen today, there's no actual evidence that Mid-State is not a responsible contractor, the council's options, if they're to award this project, are to award it to Mid-State or to reject all bids and rebid the project. And I'll leave it to staff to talk about what kind of implications that has for the project and also the much needed seismic and other safety upgrades in the facility. So there is a procedure under the law, and we actually recently brought local regulations to that would streamline and make more transparent those procedures for determining whether a bidder on a city project may be not responsible for purposes of receiving the award, but that requires a hearing under the state law and also under the regulations we brought to the council that they asked us to work with stakeholder groups to modify. And we're not agendized for that tonight, and a finding of non-responsibility has to be supported by substantial information in the record, which we do not have. So, I'd be happy to have staff, if they want to talk about their work verifying.
Let me ask if that answers the council member's question. It does.
So, thanks. And I'll just end by saying we do know staff work to verify Mid-State's eligibility to be awarded the project. So I'll stop there, and thanks for the question.
Thank you. Any other questions on the consent calendar in its entirety? Councilmember DeCarli?
I just want to go back to some of the cost increase and I guess ask you, Brian, to clarify, with admin and planning, those are costs that we control, and I don't think the project has changed since. So how did those go up?
I would actually have to ask Paul or one of the CIP team members to speak to that. I don't have the detail on the reasons or the detail behind the cost increases at my fingertips.
On the admin side of things, and I am not the expert here to speak on this, so Jonathan here may be able to help, but the city changed the formula for providing the cost for admin that wasn't used previously, so it's become a percentage of the project is allocated then to our admin fees that come from CIP. So that formula brought that cost up to meet the formula that wasn't used previously when we estimated it. So Jonathan, I don't know if you want to speak more to it.
Yeah, I can speak to it. Good evening, Mayor and council members. I'm Jonathan Songlara, the Deputy Director of Public Works. So partly when we were estimating those figures in the past, we were kind of using an estimate based on what we've seen in the past. Now what we've gotten from finance is they've actually calculated what that admin time will be over the year for our staffing. And so that equates to a rough percentage, and now we've applied that, and when we see it in the larger projects, it reflects higher than when we were kind of estimating based on what we've seen spent. And so it is higher, and that covers both the legal costs and the CIP admin time, and then also finances, city manager's time that all go to those CIP projects as well.
Okay, thank you for clarifying.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much. And that takes us to public comment, and I'll let the clerk take it here.
Yes, we did receive 5 comments on item number 2 and 2 comments on item number 3. And I do have some cards. If anyone else would like to submit a card on the consent calendar, this is the moment.
Several cards, and we're setting the timer at 3 minutes. And the first speaker is Ben Hartwig, and the second speaker will be Pat Dragan.
Good evening. My name is Ben Hansvik, and I'm a senior estimator for Midstate Construction. I'm commenting on item 3. 18 years ago, I moved into Petaluma. Well, not Petaluma, I'm sorry. I'm a Sonoma County resident. I live in Roanoke Park, but I've been working in Petaluma, making the drive in every day for 18 years. And Midstate Construction is who I work for. I was involved in the estimate for the fire station. I'm also aware of the letters and the attacks on Midstate Construction. I wanted to stand and represent that we are a local contractor, that we have successfully completed numerous projects within Petaluma. And I wanted to point out a handful of those. The Haven at Maria Drive, Building C, Petaluma Marina, Petaluma Sheraton, Kellgren Apartments, Mary Isaac Center, Casa Grande Apartments, Edith Street Apartments, Richard Lieberman Apartments, Village Square Retail Building on Lakeville Highway, Safeway, Exchange Bank, TJ Maxx, Sprouts, the East Washington Place Shopping Center, Round Walk Village Affordable Housing, Waterfront Apartments, formerly known as Rivertown, Theater Square, the Theater Square Parking Garage, Petaluma River Place, which recently just completed, Altura Apartments off of Baywood, and currently we're working on the Adobe Road Winery. Midstate is a responsible local contractor, and I would encourage the City Council to award the project to Midstate. We'll do a good job for you, and we'll add that to another list, or we'll add that project to a list of other successful projects. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Pat Drager, to be followed by Darren Rackison.
I just wanted to point out that Ben missed the Petaluma parking garage. In any case, I've been working at Midstate Construction for 45 years. 34 of those years have been in Petaluma. So I've been at Midstate for every project that Ben just mentioned, plus the Petaluma parking garage, of course. As he said, we are a responsible contractor. We are aware of the letter that was sent to you by the Carpenters Union. We did send a response. The issues that were presented were really without merit. And I hope that the response we gave you gives you an adequate response to that letter and the items in that letter. We are happy to be the low bidder on the fire station number 1. We'd love to be working on this project with you, and we're certain that it will be a successful project. We can assure you that all of the workers, laborers on the project will be paid prevailing wage, and we monitor prevailing wage very closely, and that's pretty much it. We would very much like to do this project with you. Thank you.
Thank you. Darren Rakusin, to be followed by Nicholas Harris.
Thank you, Mayor. And I'm really, a lot of the points I had were addressed by Councilmember DeCarly. And I think when I looked at the budget, the main thing that stuck out was that contingency item, was the administrative item, which sounds like a change in finance department calculation, but then also planning time. And I'm just wondering if there were additional discretionary hearings, anything like that, that would have increased that by, a few $100,000. I think this project is a kind of a microcosm, a little bit of CIP projects, and this might be a trend that I don't totally understand, but what I worry about is when we come in with a CIP project, if it's under bid or the scope isn't fully fleshed out, later down the road when it's time for implementation, we have a roadblock. We have to come back to council, and I know Mayor McDonald has said before his concerns about really following through and finishing CIP projects. So when we see something like this, when it appears like we're coming back around due to an increase in things like contingency, things like hearings or admin, it feels like, is there something we can do to make sure that's consistent and that, those are items the city has control over? How are we making sure those aren't roadblocks to moving projects forward, getting projects done, and setting appropriate expectations in the budget and with the public who goes to these hearings? So thank you.
Thank you very much. Nicholas Harris.
Good evening, Council. Nicholas Harris, Kavanaugh Pool swim lesson alum, probably 1992 or 3. I don't remember when that was. Yeah, a lot of the concerns or things that I wanted to bring up and discuss have already been covered. And I did submit a written letter that'll probably be added to the record. So I think really the thing that sticks out and what I am concerned about is the mid-year budget update and the language that was included in the staff report and the resolution is drafted. We don't have a mid-year budget update, and I think it's misleading, especially in the future, looking back at what the resolve of the council was, to say that there was a mid-year budget update and the financial impacts of the project were fully understood, and the decision to move forward and award was based on that. To be clear, I'm not against awarding the construction contract. It has nothing to do about Midstate in that letter that was sent. I'd really just like to have a complete context of what the impacts are of this project as it is being approved. And if it means delaying it until the next meeting, it's only 1 week away, I think that that's reasonable. Thank you.
Thank you. That was our last speaker, public art speaker. So we close public comment and bring it back up to council. Any comment before motion? Any motion? Councilmember Shribs.
Are we going to do 1 through?
Yes, we're doing the entirety of the consent calendar. We did not separate any items.
Okay, so 1 through 8, I'll make the motion.
Thank you very much, Councilmember.
I'll go ahead and second the motion, 1 through 8.
Thank you very much, Councilmember Shribs. And to the clerk, may we have a roll call vote?
Yes. Barnacle?
Aye.
Cater Thompson?
Yes.
DeCarly?
Yes.
Now?
Yes.
Quint,
Yes.
Shribs,
Yes.
and McDonald.
Yes.
Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you very much. Thank you to all the staff. Appreciate this. I think it's a milestone project in the city of Petaluma. Every 100 years, we need to update that firehouse. So, and that brings us to item 8. And item 8 is a housing element implementation program and introduction of the first reading of an ordinance to adopt a zoning text amendment to modify the city of Petaluma implementing zoning ordinance, certain sections, certain tasks. And I'd like to turn it over to Brian O., our community and Economic Development Director, as well as Andrew Triple, our Planning Manager, and Emmanuel Ursu, our Principal Planner. Take it away.
Thank you, Mayor McDonald, members of the council, members of the public. My name is Emmanuel Ursu, and I'm the Principal Planner that worked on this zoning code amendment. So the item before you, as the mayor introduced, is an ordinance, introduction of an ordinance to amend the zoning code. And this is part of the city's program to implement the 2023-2031 housing element. So the objectives of this zoning code amendment are to implement a specific provision of the housing element. It's found in Program 7, addressing development constraints, in particular as they apply to residential care facilities. We're amending both the IZO, the Implementing Zoning Ordinance, and the SMART Code. The SMART Code, as you know, applies to about a 400-acre area between Lakeville and Petaluma Boulevard South, from Highway 101 to the west end of downtown. In addition to addressing the land use regulations for residential care facilities, we're also creating parking standards which currently do not exist for residential care facilities. So this is all, as I mentioned, in the context of the housing element, which is derived from state mandates, and also to address our local housing need. So state law requires us to streamline, and we want to do this from a local perspective anyway, the development review process to make it more cost-effective and reduce processing time, carrying cost time associated for applicants. Also, under state law, this is part of furthering fair housing laws, so providing housing for all segments of the community, including folks who have special housing needs. Under our housing element, we do have a regional housing need allocation. Some of these units may count towards that regional housing need allocation, so it does help meet the housing need in that respect. And as I mentioned, it's really one of the driving goals is to meet our local housing needs for our aging population. The population 65 and older is growing quickly in terms of its percentage of the population, and especially the population 85 and older, which is really the population that tends to be a higher user or in need of this type of housing. So under the housing element to the housing action plan, there are several actions that are to be taken. Removing or addressing development constraints is part of that. As you see on this slide, there are other areas that are also goals of the housing action plan. Within the development constraints section of the housing element, there are specific areas that are to be addressed. Residential care facilities and streamlining development review are being addressed by this ordinance. So this process began with the preparation of the housing element. As some of you may have been involved in that process. It was a long process that involved extensive, robust public outreach process that culminated in the preparation and the adoption of the housing element, which was then subsequently certified by the state. Specific in the housing element was a program that I mentioned to address residential care facilities and the zoning regulations pertaining to them. In October of this past year, we presented to the Planning Commission at a workshop a draft proposal to implement the housing element as it pertains to RCFs. And then at a public hearing on December 9th, the Planning Commission made a recommendation that is now before you in the form of the draft ordinance. So the changes to the ordinance, there are a handful of them. They consolidate the definition of residential care facilities. Currently, we have three or four definitions for different types of residential care facilities. And these are distinctions that are made at the state level for licensing purposes. From a local zoning standpoint, they really don't make a difference for our purposes. So we thought it would be simpler to just combine those definitions into one definition. Also, the housing element program says to remove constraints and remove the conditional use permit requirements, so you have outcomes that are certain. So when an applicant, a developer comes to the city, they know that they're able to, on a particular piece of property under certain zoning, to develop a residential care facility without the need for a use permit that would entail public hearings and so on, and the uncertainty associated with that. So this ordinance would permit by right residential care facilities in all residential zones, mixed-use zones, and in commercial districts. Currently, parking for residential care facilities does not exist. So what we do in this situation under current code is we require a developer to obtain a parking study. They go to a traffic consulting firm, they prepare a study, and then bring that to the city, and we'd evaluate that. We're proposing this ordinance to include a specific parking standards for residential care facilities. So as I mentioned, we're changing the definition. In essence, a residential care facility under the new definition is a facility that provides 24-hour non-medical care supervision, typically with the assistance with activities of daily living. In the case of facilities that provide care to minors, these are for minors that cannot live with their parents or guardians. So that's the changes to the definition of the residential care facility. And the ordinance goes into the specific language that we can get into detail if any council member has questions about it. These are the current types of residential care facilities that our zoning code has definitions for. The top three, residential care facilities for the elderly, adult residential care facilities, and residential care facilities for chronically ill. These are all licensed separately under the state law. As I mentioned, there's no purpose there's no reason under local zoning purposes to make these distinctions. Real quickly, the difference between a use that's conditionally permitted and one that's allowed by right is if it's conditionally permitted, public notice and a public hearing is required. It is not exempt from CEQA, and the review standards are qualitative in nature, versus a permitted by right. As long as it meets the definition of a residential care facility, it's a ministerial decision, meaning we're looking at quantitative standards that are objective, and it is exempt from CEQA unless there's an exception to the exemption. So under our current code, the code defines three types of residential care facilities, but lists 5 in the tables of uses permitted in Chapter 4 of the zoning code. Residential care with 6 or fewer clients are allowed by right in the residential zones. Under state law, there's local preemption of regulations of facilities with 6 or fewer residents. In other words, we cannot impose any requirements for a residential care facility that's located in a residential zone that we do not apply uniformly to any residential use in that same zone. So that's why they're permitted under existing zoning by right for 6 or fewer residents. The primary change we're making is in the mixed use and commercial zones where they're either permitted by right but have certain limitations, which footnotes 10 and 6 refer to, or are subject to a conditional use permit. Footnote 6 only allows the use on upper floors or behind a ground floor street fronting use. And then in other areas on the property, it's allowed by a conditional use permit. And then footnote 10 says they're only allowed above ground floor. So the tables that would be changed in Chapter 4 of the zoning code are tables 4.1 through 4.4. 4.1 and 4.2 are put together in this table. We would remove the references to residential care for 6 or fewer and for 7 or more, which is not even allowed under current zoning anyway in the residential zones. And we just have one new definition: residential care facility. It is permitted by right with no restrictions in all of the residential zones. And then in planned unit districts and PUDs or PCDs, where residential use is the principally permitted use, they would also be permitted in those areas. In the mixed use and commercial zones, they would be permitted by right with few caveats. One is a facility in the mixed use or commercial zone would be subject to site plan and architectural review. It would also be subject to objective design standards pertaining to frontage on the streets to ensure transparency to the streets and opening up to the public realm to have that interaction between the street and the facility. And then this is the use table from the SMART code. We would add residential care facility as a permitted use. Currently, the SMART code is silent as it pertains to residential care facilities. So we would allow it, add it as a permitted use, subject to footnote number 2, which in areas where shop fronts are required, which is in the downtown, the core of the downtown, there in those locations, it'd only be allowed on upper floors or behind a ground floor use. In terms of parking, we'd establish a parking requirement for residential care facilities. For facilities that are in single-family or multifamily dwellings, there would be one space required for every 4 clients above 10 clients. Facilities with 10 or fewer clients would be subject to the underlying parking requirements of the zoning district. And then in all other zones except for the R1 through R5 zones, there'd be 2 spaces for the first 6 clients and then 1 for every 4 clients above that. And then some of these facilities, as I mentioned, have fully contained apartments within the facility. So a unit with a bathroom, a kitchen, bedroom, living area. Those units would have a separate parking requirement, which would be half a space for each one of those apartments, plus the 1 for every 4 in the other portions of the building that are not a dwelling unit, do not meet the definition of a dwelling unit. And then the same requirements for residential care facilities, parking requirements for residential care facilities would be applied in the SMART code. And then this is the list of uses in Chapter 24, the Administrative Procedures chapter of the IZO, which requires SPAR review for various types of uses. We would add number 14 at the bottom of this list. Residential care facilities with 7 or more clients in mixed use and commercial zones would be subject to site plan and architectural review. So the Planning Commission, as I mentioned, provided its input at two meetings, a study session in October and then a public hearing in December of 2025. All the Planning Commission's comments have been incorporated into the draft ordinance that is before the City Council this evening. This is implementing the housing element, specific program of the housing element, and so we're relying on the environmental review that was prepared for the housing element. So staff recommends that the City Council introduce the ordinance that's before you this evening. And this ordinance, as I mentioned, will amend the IZO and the SMART code, addressing land uses, parking, administrative procedures, and definitions. And then also just wanted to point out that at the December 9 meeting, the City Council, or the Planning Commission also considered separately under a separate agenda item a request by a developer to construct a residential care facility at 1221 Petaluma Boulevard North. That facility was approved by the Planning Commission, subject to several conditions, including one condition that they not obtain building permits until this zoning code amendment is in effect. So that facility would not be permitted as designed and submitted under current existing zoning regulations. So this ordinance would need to be adopted and in effect before we can issue building permits for that project. And they did submit building permit applications just before the end of 2025, and those plans are in the plan check process right now. The other thing I'd point out is we did have the city granted approval for another residential care facility in the Riverfront project. That was granted back in 2023, I believe it was. Their approvals have been extended and are good. They're valid through June of this year. I spoke with the developer this afternoon. They said they're still actively pursuing financial partners and working on the project. They have not abandoned that project. And that was for a facility with 106 total beds, or 70 of those are apartments, and then 36 memory care beds. That concludes my presentation, and available for any questions.
Thank you very much. Great presentation. Kind of a big topic here. Like you say, there's several properties that are looking to move into this area, so it's important that we get deep into this one. So I'd like to start with some questions. Comments later, questions now. Councilmember Shrib.
Okay, questions, just to differentiate things, because having my mom going through 13 years of various facilities and looking for them here in town. So the difference between a residential care and senior apartments with care of some sort. So there is a definite line here. We have to note that you didn't talk about the differences between those, about senior living apartments with daycare type of help, or allowing even 24 help inside the rooms versus medical care 24/7 by the office. So I think everything you're saying so far refers only to 24/7 care with having an actual nurse on site 24/7. Is that correct?
Residential care facilities are not skilled nursing facilities. Skilled nursing facilities are more acute care facilities with very strict state staffing requirements, staffing ratios. That is not true for residential care facilities for the elderly, or under this combined definition, residential care facilities. There are licensing requirements. I'm not familiar with the details of those. We do have representatives from Gallagher Senior Living here. They could probably provide some additional details regarding specifics of licensing for residential care facilities. But they provide non-medical care, although they may provide limited medication reminders, that sort of thing, so under a very specific care plan. They typically have staff 24/7, housekeeping staff, staff that helps with dressing and feeding as necessary, social services type staff, activity staff, that sort of thing.
Okay, good. So there's a bracket here. There's care facilities above the residential care, which is highly medical. And then there's a whole section below, which is senior assisted, not a senior assisted or even just senior apartments with food, let's say, and help. So so you defined the top line, which was the medical part, adding in the 24/7, but you didn't define the bottom. So where's the difference between senior living and residential care? Where is that line drawn so we know exactly what we're applying here?
Yeah. So I think the line would be if a state license is required. So if it's a facility, a residential care facility that is licensed by the state, then that would fall under this category. If it is apartments that are restricted to seniors, but they're not providing, they don't have a suite of services that they're providing, then that would not meet the definition of a residential care facility.
Okay, so I just want to make clear because my mom was in the Vintage House, which is out off Washington, and that's where the fine line is. They provided apartments and food and even cleaning services and the like, but they allowed medical care within and if even it was 24-hour nurse, it was allowed in. That would not be residential care. That's still senior living, not residential care. So there's a line there. So a Vintage House, whereas the facility right in front of it would be more the residential care, but that's almost like 24/7 medical. So that's like almost above, but not quite. So I'm saying there's a couple of residences here that where do they fall in this category, residential care? Where does the Vintage House fall in it? And there's a place next to it. Where does that fall into it?
Sure. Thank you, Council Member. Planning Manager Andrew Triple. I'm not familiar exactly with the facilities that you're referencing, the characteristics of the care that they provide, but our code does differentiate between a residential care facility that provides non-medical care versus a healthcare facility that does provide those medical services, whether it's acute care, assisted living, and such. The residential care facilities can have a memory care component to them or an assisted living component to them. But I believe, and I would love to cross-check with the folks here from Gallagher Senior Living, I believe, though, that's still, even though they provide support for, say, taking pills and things like that, it still doesn't rise to the level of the medical care that you would receive in a healthcare facility.
Okay, good. I just want to make sure we're differentiating. There's a bottom line and a top line.
Correct.
This is in the middle area here that we're talking about, so that we have senior apartment living zoning and residences would be different from what we're talking about here.
Right, and I think as Emmanuel pointed out, these are also facilities that are licensed by the state. So it would be differentiated from, say, a multifamily project that was dedicated to seniors and that would just be age restricted. So these residential care facilities, while they oftentimes do provide independent living units for persons over the age of 60 or 65, they don't necessarily have to. That would be, let's say, compare that then to a multifamily project where it is specifically age restricted to provide independent units to persons over a certain age.
Yeah, so to be clear, like our Danco Meridian apartments have social services. That's not a residential care.
That's
okay. I was make sure everyone's clear on what we're bracketing here, top and bottom, on the zoning. I'll go later in comments about that. But you mentioned parking, and there's parking expectations, but you didn't say what those parking expectation was. What are the expectations in parking units per unit, per resident, per what? What is it?
The recommended parking is for memory care beds or for units that do not meet the definition of a dwelling unit. It's one parking space for every 4 residents. And then if within a facility there are independent or self-contained units. There'd be one parking space for every 2 units, or 0.5 per unit.
Okay, that's pretty minimum parking for a 6-person house in a residential area. That's like a driveway. Okay. Is that a minimum or a maximum, by the way?
That's a minimum.
That's a minimum.
Yeah.
Just want to be clear on what that requirement is. Minimum there. Okay, and then you mentioned downtown. I wasn't quite clear. If someone builds something like this in the downtown area, are we saying we must have retail, or it cannot, or allowed to not have retail? I wasn't clear on which way you were saying.
Sure.
what is
So,
that?
so within the Central Petaluma specific plan boundary, development is regulated by the SMART code. And the SMART code has what are called frontages that are assigned to certain corners, certain portions of streets, typically at the corner. So for instance, at the corner of East Washington and I'm going to forget the cross street, Copeland, right. There is a shop front frontage, and that means that you do have to have ground floor retail at that precise location. This proposed amendment would not change that requirement. So only in the SMART code does it respect the shop front frontage requirement to have a ground floor activity generating use such as retail.
Okay, because I can imagine there's places where they might build downtown or near downtown that may be forced into having retail, and that doesn't make sense to me because these facilities really are not related to retail at all, but maybe a very good service to have near downtown. So I want to make sure we have that zoning correct of how much retail is going to be required if they're in that near zone. So I'd like to get that mapped out a little bit. So there's a couple spots near downtown that I think the zoning may force retail, and I'm going, we shouldn't do that.
Well, it doesn't necessarily force retail specifically. What it does is says that you have to have sort of a ground floor design that looks more commercial in nature, that's consistent with our downtown development. But you could have some sort of activity generating use within that. So I think a great example is the Spirit Living project over in Riverfront, there at the Circle. And on their ground floor, they actually integrated, they brought the dining areas down to the ground floor. They brought some of their activity areas down to the ground floor, and then they actually added a portion that was a restaurant as well. So there are ways that they can bring those uses out of the core of the building into the ground floor, front them. Oftentimes we've been doing that with multifamily as well, with community spaces in multifamily developments. So it really what it tries to do in the downtown area, where those shop frontage are designated, it tries to respect the form and design of the building, but there is flexibility within the actual how the interior space is used.
Okay, good. I just want to make sure that there was that flexibility in there, that wasn't going to be a stickler on if they're near the downtown area. Moving on to basically it's affordability and getting some grant monies involved. So a lot of these folks, elderly, can't afford it fully themselves, but it's highly subsidized either by government or by insurance companies to pay for all of this. So if the individuals cannot directly pay for it out of their pocket, but is paid for by either insurance or government subsidy or something like that, medical program that they're on, is that accounted as an affordability unit? And if so, does it count in RENA as low-income unit? So that we have some of those low incomes covered by RENA, not just a unit, but it's actually low income if the person is actually being supported by other than themselves. Is that counting?
I do not think that would count as a below market rate unit. Under state law, there is preemption on regulating the rents in residential care facilities. So the city cannot require an inclusionary, so we cannot apply our inclusionary housing requirements to these types of facilities. We can apply the commercial linkage, housing linkage fee to these units, at least to the portions of the units that do not include the fully contained individual apartments. So like the common dining areas, the memory care unit components, any of those areas that are not typically associated with a multifamily residential building, we could include in the square footage that's counted towards the commercial linkage fee, commercial housing linkage fee. But under state law, we're not allowed to require inclusionary housing or rent restrictions.
Okay, I just want to check on some of the numbers we might be able to use for RENA. Another thing, RENA question is if you have 6 residents there, but you also happen to have your caretakers, does that count as 6 units for RENA numbers, or does it count as 8 because we have caretakers also living on site?
Yeah. So in terms of for RENA numbers, we will look at the floor plan of the facility, and for every unit in the facility that is fully contained with its own kitchen, bathroom, and sleeping area, that will count as a housing unit. That would meet the HUD definition and HCD definition of a housing unit, and we could count that as towards our regional housing need allocation.
Okay, so in the larger facilities, they will have kitchens and bathrooms for each unit, but in a lot of care facilities, it's just going to be a bedroom with 2 people in it and only 1 kitchen for the whole house.
Yes, that would only count as...
That would be counted as 1 unit.
Correct.
Versus the 2 proposals, I understand, are multi-units, and every one of those probably has a kitchen and bathroom. Each one of those would count as a unit per that's being used.
Exactly.
Okay, just want to make sure it's clear on what's a RENA unit and what's not.
Yeah.
And what counts and what doesn't count on all that. I asked several questions ahead of time. You got me a really nice, thank you for the write-up on that. You gave the numbers out. I don't know if the others saw that report out on the numbers, but you didn't mention them at all about the need. And I don't know if you wanted to go over that now or if there's anybody interested in it. I thought those numbers were vital. I don't know if you'd like to say to the public, here's some of those estimates of what's needed. Thank you. And I'll pass it on after that.
Thank you. Appreciate all your questions. I think half the time a question begs the next question. And so let me have a few follow up here. So the Gallagher proposal, is it a 100% state regulated property? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. I thought I was what is here and just want to confirm it. And then in the senior living that's not residential care, senior apartment, et cetera, is it streamlined? Is there
That would not fall, so senior housing does not fall under this,
Sure.
under this ordinance.
And it's not, so it's kind of old school and less streamlined than, I'm just thinking residential's moving to streamline, all the different things that are moving to streamline, and that sector is maybe left behind on the streamlining.
I think that what we're proposing is a streamlining measure because by permitting the land use by right,
Yeah,
we're
sure.
eliminating that discretionary.
So we're addressing this real well. But
Right,
maybe
correct.
there's a component that we're not addressing really well that Councilmember Schwartz brought up. And then does this apply to conversion of housing? Somebody says, I want to open a business in an existing large house. So this applies to that as well.
Yes, it does.
And then say hypothetically, the aubergine business downtown, the old JCPenney's and Marin Outdoors, et cetera. Could a proposal be made on that property to become residential care? What challenge would that present to us? I mean, it fits the zone, one of the zones that we were discussing.
Yeah, as long as it's in a commercial or mixed-use zone or residential zone, it would be permitted by right. If it's on a block that has a shop front requirement under the Central Petaluma specific plan, then there would be some certain design requirements on the street frontage, or the use would be behind the street fronting use, but otherwise.
So I forget, in the central specific plan, is that side of the boulevard part of it? Yeah, it's a smart code that's the other side. I'm getting my codes mixed up. Smart code is only the easterly side of the boulevard, but central specific is both sides and more. Okay. And then you were talking about linkage fees. Are any of the proposed projects, or can you visualize subsidizing through any of our housing funding. Is that what you're saying? We could take money and put it into, is any money going into the Gallagher project that is this city subsidy for project?
No, the Gallagher project is a private market rate development project.
Okay.
However, the commercial linkage fees that would be required to pay would contribute to the city's housing fund.
They would be paying
So,
in,
right, they would be
not
paying in to
subsidizing
support
out.
future housing development.
Excellent clarity, thank you. And did we leave any zoning codes out? Does this ordinance cover essentially every zoning code?
It covers all of the residential, mixed-use, and commercial zoning districts in both the IZO and the SMART code. It's not going to include business park or industrial zoning districts.
Good clarity.
Or for that matter, open space or agricultural. So, yeah.
Thank you. And the objective standards for these kinds of projects, are they developed and in place? We say objective standards have to apply to this, and those are in place.
Yes, so they're permitted by right. So as long as they meet the setbacks and all those requirements, they would be subject to site plan and architectural review, but not a conditional use permit.
Absolutely. The next question, is everything still subject to SPAR?
Yes.
Okay, fabulous. Thank you. Great questions, Councilmember Shribs. Thank you. Anyone else with questions? Seeing none. Oh, wait, Vice Mayor?
How were the parking requirements determined for this?
Yeah. So did a few things. First is looked at the applications that were submitted before us, where we had parking studies that were done. So the Spirit Living project is a very different location, very different type of project than on a very small site than the Gallagher project. So the Gallagher project has much more parking than this requirement is. The Spirit Living project is pretty much right on course with what we're recommending. We had suggested to the Planning Commission one parking space for every 3 clients. And looking at the other thing we did is look at other zoning codes in the area. The range seemed to be between 1 to 2, 1 parking space for every 2 clients to 1 for every 4. We'd recommended 1 for every 3 to the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission discussed it and felt that that may be too much parking. And so the Planning Commission's recommendation is 1 for every 4 clients. So yeah, those were the ways we came up with the parking requirement.
Okay. Yeah, because I think maybe with Gallagher, perhaps it makes sense. But others, I mean, I think it's more circumstantial with others, with residential or commercial or mixed use, where I don't know that we understand, what sort of implications that's going to have, because parking is such a huge issue in Petaluma. I'm curious, with such a low threshold for parking, does this qualify the city for more regional grants, or are there other benefits that would be encouraging us to do this?
Can I just add, and I just want to clarify for Vice Mayor DeCarli, that this is a parking minimum, correct?
That's correct,
That's
yes.
correct. So parking minimum, that's the threshold, not the maximum. So we're not limiting parking, we're just saying this parking minimum.
Right, but I think people with doing these projects would be more inclined to have as few spaces as possible, to maximize construction or whatever it is that they'd like.
Sure, I'd like to we actually see the opposite. Typically, especially here in the North Bay, the market wants to provide more spaces than what the minimum is. So they're going to do their analysis, and it's likely going to be based on, certainly in the case of, for example, for both Spirit Living and Gallagher Senior Living, they have extensive experience in the industry. And so they've got a lot of data that they bring to bear when it comes to establishing their parking need. And they would strive to meet that need. So I would suspect that the minimum is helpful in ensuring that we get the amount of parking that we're comfortable with, but the market would likely provide the amount of parking that they're comfortable with.
Yes, but then we could still potentially be stuck with the minimum. You know,
This is
so-
true, yes, yes.
So, I mean, back to my question, I mean, are we making these policies to qualify for more grants in any sort of way from maybe, SCTCA or MTC or anybody else, or
So
does this
Vice
help
Mayor,
the city in any sort of way?
it doesn't help. The intent isn't around securing additional grants. As Emmanuel had pointed out, we looked at exemplars, different zoning codes in different cities, and then looked at the reality of what we're seeing applications come in at to get us to this to these ratios.
Okay. And I guess if we think that it's going to be higher, and that's what their data suggests, why don't we meet that?
Well, there's some of the factors that we're trying to encourage is development of residential care facilities within walkable environments. That being the assumption that, you do have residents of these facilities who are mobile, who can get out, who enjoy being in a connected community and the freedom of not having to have a car. And so in setting the minimum parking standards where they are, we are using it to incentivize development of these facilities, certainly by not having a higher minimum parking standard, but at the same time by permitting them by right across our residential, commercial, especially commercial and mixed-use zoning districts. We are seeking to create opportunities for these facilities in these walkable environments where there would be less demand for parking.
Okay, but you say it would decentivize them to raise it, but that they also would want it raised by their own data.
But if their own data indicates that they have a preference for parking, then presumably they would propose the facility that reflects their preference. But
Okay.
it would still have to meet the minimum amount of parking.
Mm-hmm. And okay, and then parking aside, I share similar concerns about either other MU2 zone parcels, buildings. As mentioned, the JCPenney building, others. Those could all be turned into facilities of different types, or of residential care facilities.
They could be, yes, they could be converted for use as a residential care facility. Presumably that, the building, the construction typology and such would have to support that.
Mm-hmm. And I know that this is CEQA exempt, but wouldn't something like, including commercial in this be something that you'd maybe want to consider through CEQA or other means if you're putting a care facility in for the elderly next to a commercial facility that's very loud? That could create a lot of conflict.
Sure. So the CEQA exemption only applies to the action on the zoning text amendment. The projects would be subject to SPAR, and that is a discretionary action, and so they would trigger CEQA at the time that a project-specific application is made.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions on this before we go to public comment? Okay, public comment on this. And with that, our clerk to help us out.
Yes, we did receive 2 public comments on this item, and I do have several cards, and I see one more coming. Anyone else?
Okay, let's start with Darren Rakusin, to be followed by Brooke Ross.
There we go. Thank you, Mayor, staff, Council. I have one specific item on this, and then kind of it brings me into two broader items. The first one being the parking minimums. Hearing the discussion about this, it is a minimum. But I will say that when we think about ensuring there's maximum flexibility for developers into the future, a lot of the impetus in driving down parking minimums is to allow for more buildable area, more flexibility for people to get projects done. We also want to think about and make sure it's in the conversation or in the balance about safe and efficient operation for whatever the facility type is. And it just stuck out to me that, we just saw the Gallagher project and they did not choose to minimize parking. As was stated, the market in their case tended them toward offering actually over the old standard. They were at 1.65, I believe, per person to parking. And I just want to make sure that the actual developers or operators of this facility, their best practices for running that type of facility play a role in determining what the minimum is, right? Because we can make a no minimum. Obviously, we accede that there is some balance to be struck between having enough parking for the safe and efficient operation, but not too much. And I just want to make sure that in that conversation, not just planning commission or local land use experts, but developers and folks who operate the facilities are helping inform that conversation, which I assume has happened. But this also gets me into a broader discussion when we think about mixed use getting converted to allow for residential care facilities. I had when this came before Planning Commission, kind of a shortened debate with Commissioner Goldman about this issue. And just thinking from an urban design perspective, the purpose of mixed use and how having commercial on certain thoroughfares encourages the creation of community space and active street frontages, right? And this has been a discussion item forever, whereas allowing residential in those same areas does not necessarily kind of inculcate this sense of community and people having such an active street. So I just want to make sure as we're thinking about this, as we're thinking about the balance to be struck between pure market driven, hey, let's allow pure residential, this is residential care facilities, but in the general plan, we're going to open up mixed use to a lot more pure residential uses. We want to think about the urban design implications of that and really where are we in the balance of trying to use zoning to inform some kind of urban design sense of place that we all want versus where are we letting the market decide. And at the Planning Commission, a lot of folks were like, look, we have to let the market decide. We have to allow for residential and mixed use and commercial because that's what people can build right now. That's what makes projects possible. But then, we get bogged down in a lot of discussions in the general plan about 15-minute neighborhoods and hyper planning out dots of commercial. I just want to make sure we're consistent in how we figure out, is this market driven? Are we using zoning as an urban design factor? And also, we're updating the IZO when we communicate about the general plan, let people know the changes are already happening. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Brooke Ross, to be followed by Maureen Gottschall.
Good evening, Mayor McDonald, council members, and city staff. My name is Brooke Ross, and I'm here this evening to voice my support of the zoning amendment, especially as it relates to residential care facilities. I think that it helps to remove the barriers and to increase the production of housing for vulnerable populations, including seniors. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Maureen Gottschall, to be followed by Christine White.
Hello. So I was taking a look at it and I want to discuss the parking element or the parking calculation. And so what the existing policy said that if you had a facility over 7 clients that you would look at the actual operational needs, the staffing requirements, the neighborhood parking availability, the public transportation, and the site-specific conditions. In this, now you want to change this and do a calculation, but you're doing that calculation and you're kind of putting across all of the different factors, the residential, the commercial, and then that other category. And they're very different. And so when I was looking at what an RCF facility has the following types of visitors or people who are there, and there's staffing, and the staffing that they need are potentially direct care, nursing, administration, kitchen, housekeeping, maintenance, aides. It's, we have a large group of facilities, so there's multiple things. So if you're looking at it from, let's just do residential 10
10 residents in a residential community. Under the calculation, that's only 2 spaces, because in the residential note, it says the 1-to-4 ratio doesn't kick in until after 10. So you have 3, 4 people potentially. You have visiting physicians, therapists, physical therapy, podiatry, dental services, you have delivery services, you have visiting family. So now we're at 2 parking spaces in the residential with potentially 7 to 8 people needed. And so it just doesn't make sense that you would use that calculation. I understand it's a minimum, but I think you're more likely to have a contractor stick to that minimum in a residential than you do in potentially a commercial, where they have more flexibility, they're in a bigger property. And so I don't think you should use this calculation. I should in a residential. Plus, if you are, let's say you're down B Street all the way down versus being right downtown, you're 7 blocks away versus 2 blocks away. That's a big difference. You have access to mass transit. You know, if these are facilities, you have possibly disabled people. So I think you're lumping everything, at least for the residential piece, into something that you're trying to cookie cutter, and it's not a cookie cutter situation. And I think what will happen is you'll get residents upset, and then all of a sudden you won't have success. You'll have everyone not wanting this facility. I feel like we should use, I'm for the idea of it, just so you know. Thank you.
Thank you. Christina White, to be followed by Chantel Rogers.
Thank you. I'm going to build off what Maureen just said. Having had experience, and I mean as of yesterday, going to the TAM in Greenbrae, they have your minimum parking probably there. So everybody is parking on the street, including like my mom who needs a walker. They have 1 handicap spot for a guest to come, and she was coming to visit her friend. So the minimum isn't enough for all the people. So everybody on all those side streets, for people who live there, there are people that are visiting people in the TAM, working in the TAM, whether they're a doctor, whether they're a nurse, whether they're housekeeping, all parked on the entire streets and over by the apartment complexes. The entire things were full. So for me, it's fine, I can walk. But for my mother, it was very difficult for her to find someplace. She'd wait until somebody moved out of the single handicap spot so she could take that spot. So please reconsider this. The same thing on the other hand, where you're talking about, do we need it by some commercial? My mother-in-law lived at the Redwoods. She started in independent living and then went to assisted living, and then she had to go somewhere else for memory care. So I've gone the gamut with all of this. But when she was independent living, she could walk across the street to go to Safeway and do her shopping. She still felt that independence. There they had a few more parking places, so we could usually find something, but we also could park in the Safeway parking lot. So there's a balance there for how do we make this work? I think there's a need for it. I'm supportive of it, but I think we really need to think about how are we handling the parking for it so that we don't have our citizens upset, and so that we have a place for everybody to come and visit in these, situations where those that are visiting are often less mobile as well. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Chantel Rogers, to be followed by Dwayne Bellinger.
Hi. First off, I just want to say I'm a little disappointed that what the city put up on its agenda site, which I printed out all 20 pages of, was not the presentation that we got. So usually I can follow along, and I wasn't able to do that tonight. And so I wasn't able to go back and take a look to find the answer for this question because I didn't see it. I didn't follow it when we were going through. I'm just trying to clarify which kinds of facilities are going to all be lumped together now, because we're making decisions for every single kind. And we're talking about mostly all the questions are elderly facilities and whatnot. But on the page that came from what I saw that you guys posted, it listed these as possibilities: residential care facilities for the elderly, adult residential facilities, residential care facilities for the chronically ill, but also group homes, social rehabilitation facilities, and small family homes. So my question was, are we talking about rehab centers? Are we talking about halfway houses? I mean, if I were just looking, I would assume that that was. And, you know, there's nothing wrong with those. We need to anticipate that as well, but I wouldn't think that we'd be looking at the same kind of by right possibilities for developers who would be doing all of those and consider that to be the same considerations. So I just was hoping for some clarification on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Dwayne Bellinger.
Thank you, council members. The one place where I've seen a problem is when we go to pick up somebody who's limited mobility to take them for a day at the park or take them out to dinner, is that we find that the two parking places, one of them is occupied by one of the workers there and the other is occupied by a long-term resident. And there's no place to conveniently park to pick up somebody within walking distance of somebody with limited mobility. And it would be nice if there was some requirement that one of the parking places be available for those who don't have a car but are having friends pick them up. And I don't know how you could change anything to make that happen, but it would be nice to be able to pick up people to take them out to dinner.
Thank you. That was our last speaker. Closes public comment. There were probably a couple good questions in there that I'd like staff to take a stab at. Do you have a favorite question you want to answer from what you heard, or do you want me to paraphrase back what I heard?
I would love for you to paraphrase so that we make sure that we're hitting all of your questions.
Well, the first one on my list is, does this parking requirement, is it one size fits all, and is that appropriate? The minimum.
So one of the things I would point to is the parking requirement for small facilities in existing single-family neighborhoods, which is where most of the existing facilities in town are located. So the proposed code requirement would be that you meet the base parking requirement for single-family home, which is 3 parking spaces for a residence with 3 or fewer bedrooms. For every bedroom with every house with 4 or more bedrooms, there's an additional parking space per bedroom. So a 6-bedroom house would require 6 parking spaces. So that's what the parking requirement would be for residential care facilities in a single-family or multifamily residential zone. So I think that addresses the comment that I believe Maureen, I apologize, I didn't get her last name, made. And then with regards to the larger facilities, as I mentioned earlier, we looked at the parking study that was done for the Spirit Living proposal. And based on that parking study, that's really what we pegged this to. When we apply the standards for parking under this proposed ordinance, it would meet what was being proposed based on the parking study that was prepared for the Spirit Living facility. For the Gallagher project, their parking requirement under this code would be 43 spaces. They've decided to provide 164 spaces, so way above the minimum required. So I think, again, a lot of it's going to come down to, the specific location of a facility, if it's in a denser core area versus an outer area where the lot sizes are larger. So and gives the developer flexibility in terms of how much parking they're going to provide.
The other question I heard was there's a lot of types that are getting lumped into non-CUP, including group homes or maybe a different animal than what we're strictly thinking of. Do you have an answer to that?
Yeah, so that is correct. So again, under state law, group homes, small family care homes, those are, cities cannot regulate those for small facilities with 6 or fewer residents. So those are all lumped into this definition. Includes community crisis homes, social rehab facilities, group homes, foster family homes, crisis nurseries, residential care facilities for chronically ill, adult residential care facilities, residential care facilities for the elderly. And if the state comes up with more categories,
So if you're saying can't regulate, but if they're in single-family residential or in other residential neighborhoods, other zonings, those still apply even though you can't regulate the use?
So
their
we can't-
parking requirement would still, that underlying parking would still be?
Yes, because those are the same parking requirements that we apply to a single-family home in a single-family district.
Then there's comment to the experiential data, anecdotal data of parking is inadequate at the door, and something needs to be done about that. How do you reply to that?
Start it, please. I think the response is we need to strike a balance. There's planning for people and there's planning for parking, and so I think we are striking that balance. We've looked at what's being proposed. We've looked at what other cities are doing. At the end of the day, this is a cost factor, and so it's something we want to be mindful of. It's something Planning Commission also had a really robust discourse on. I don't know the specific project that was being referenced. It sounded like perhaps it was in Marin, maybe not a local one, but again, council has the purview if they want to seek something different. But with what we've looked at, what we have received as a city, we're confident that this is going to strike a balance for production of housing, as well as providing a minimum level of parking required.
Thank you. Yeah, so I just want to make sure we got a chance to begin a answer to some of those questions. And Councilmember Barnacle, you want to weigh in?
Sure. The Planning Commission was pretty robust on this, and we heard it twice, so I do feel pretty comfortable with where we landed. I'll say I hope we address some of the visitor parking issues in residential neighborhoods with the description that we got there. One of the things I'll just say, the discussion about Spirit, right? We heard Spirit Living has not abandoned their project, but they are looking for financing partners. So, and this is a cost factor, right? So we have a project in our town that is trying to get built and currently is looking for financing partners and struggling to find them, right? And so to increase the parking requirements would create additional cost burdens on projects like that. That was one of the discussion points at the Planning Commission. So we're like, and then noting that other projects like the Gallagher project are going to provide the parking that they need. So this is about, trying to make sure that we're prioritizing building housing for people, a critically, critical need, definitely. And, we're an aging community. There's going to be a growing demand for this. We've already seen that with the data that's been provided. And we're prioritizing like the flexibility to try and produce these units over the mandates for parking and making sure that we're trying to just create opportunity.
Thank you. Anyone? Councilmember Now?
I just wanted to chime in. I'm very familiar with the Springfield residential care facility on the east side, and I attend St. James Church, and they have a shuttle that takes probably a dozen parishioners from Springfield across the street. You would think that an active community, aging but active, they could walk across the street, but that's a very large intersection. So a lot of these facilities have shuttles to get their clients to the local churches, to local facilities that like the senior center. So I just want to keep in mind that, to back up Councilmember Barnacle, some of these facilities might choose to have a shuttle and move their clients instead of having parking, because this is an active aging community, but not everybody's going to be able to drive because of ailments. You know, they can't walk across the street. They might not be able to be driving, but they might have visitors. So we can take all of this into each facility's blueprint, more or less, what they're going to offer their clients. So Gallagher's going to be top notch. I'm looking forward to it, and I know a lot of people in single family homes that are looking to, downsize and move into those things. These residential care facilities, like that was pointed out in public comment, do have a lot of staff, and those staff members may not be able to take public transportation. They will be needing some sort of parking for their employees. There's going to be a lot of staff, from housekeeping to maintenance to medical. And then we also have to think about what parking for visitors. So we do have to think about those things, but I know that at Springfield, we can park across the street, those that are able-bodied, and walk across to visit people that are staying at Springfield. So that's the only one I am familiar with. But Councilmember Barnacle, thank you for your input on, is it Spirit Living? As it will be much different than our Gallagher plan.
Councilmember Shribs?
Comment time?
Yes, it's comment time.
Okay.
Go get him.
Yeah, so being, I've had to move my mom from several facilities, working my way up the line, 13 years. So I did investigate lots of facilities here in town to keep her close. And so, yeah, there is, first off, a high need, because it was very difficult to find, especially an affordable place, because now the costs could be anywhere. We were getting away with anywhere from $2,000 to $3,000 per month for would be a house. It would be 3 bedrooms, 6 occupants, double occupied per bedroom, so 6 people, 3-bedroom house. That's pretty typical for these places. In a usually a little older home, because they got it at a cheaper rate, and it's in probably a neighborhood that doesn't have huge density of cars there, because there's a market going on. They have to be able to market for the clients, and the clients' families are usually paying or taking care of all the monies. And so that's one of the things you look at when you enter a facility, enter a parent in the facility or relative, is, can I visit? How much care do they get? Is a laundry? Where do you keep your supplies? Turns out almost the garages are full of supplies. They're not used for garages. They're used for supplies for the house. And if it's a standard home here in Petaluma, you're going to have usually a 2-car garage, and you're going to have 2 parking spaces in front of that garage, and that's it. And so, yes, there will be all the doctors, nurses, and help. Usually the one I used required their help to park on the street or to transport by bike or get dropped off. And they kept those 2 spots open for visitors all the time. So they had a market plan so that when I came to visit my mom, I could actually pull into the driveway all the time. And even for the service folks, they said those had to stay open for visitors. So there's usually a market plan that's required for their marketing to get people to come. But these places now are up to $4,000 or $5,000 a month. Those are the cheap places. They go up to $10,000 to $12,000 per month now, pretty standard. So there's a huge market out there as what clients. So the parking is part of the huge plan as far as marketing and bringing the clients in. So they're going to take care of themselves. They're not going to find themselves. So the parking part is at 1 space per. What does it limit? What does it prevent from happening? And I think that's the purpose of this, is the minimums to prevent something from happening. What does it prevent? So it prevents someone from getting a 4-story, 4-bedroom house and putting in large numbers of folks. So 1 or 2 spots in there. But if they have a 5 or even a 6-bedroom house, that still only counts as 2, even at a 1 to 3, a 1 to 4, there's still only 1 or 2 parking spaces. So there's no real limitations there. for residential. But it will limit in a downtown, near downtown, if it's a older house with only one little parking space in front of the house and almost no parking because it's pretty crowded at the times on the street. So, okay, that's where the only real limit might happen that would be prevented by this ruling. So that's pretty minimum prevention versus opening the door and saying, okay, you're on your own, you're creating a facility, you're creating your market, you got to figure out how to fund it. It's up to them, basically, to figure out how much parking they're going to need for their business. And they're going to fail if they don't have enough parking. So that's not going to happen. I'm not worried about parking spaces, minimums. We want to prevent really bad situation. And might it apply to a downtown area where there's almost no parking and they have a large facility, a 6-story facility put in? Think about how the implications there for this parking. Do they need one parking space if they're downtown and have a 4-story with 30 units in it? How many parking spaces are they required to have? Will that be different than, because we could easily have senior parking senior complex downtown 4-story in a couple of the empty lots. So that's where I'm concerned about the parking, is the downtown or near the downtown area, whereas this would prevent someone from creating a residential in the downtown area, either at a house or at a 4-story, and being not affordable housing, it'd just be limited to 4 stories. Okay, so that's one limitation I'm worried about. The other one is we want to make sure, especially on the Gallagher and in Living Spirit, that do we have the adequate SPAR and standards and design standards and street level standards, that there's expectations of it's got to look pretty nice from the street. Because some of these facilities may want to try to get away from, I think for the marketing, they have to market to the clients and the family. So usually they want to have a nice job of the family coming, likes to visit. So that's usually not a problem, but we should have some standards in there. And we need to make sure that after we do the zoning, that we also make sure the standards and designs are in there also in place. Then as far as the need goes, I think there was if you look at the answers to the questions I put in showing the need, I think by 2040, over the next 15 years, we're going to need, we have the Gallagher coming in with like 130, we have Spirit Living coming in like 80, still not enough. We need another 100. So that was the thing, and that's what we discovered here in town. For our population and dynamics that we have, and my wife was a hospice nurse for 25 years, so I had lots of discussions with her about where do we put people, where they go, and so for the last over 25 years I've been having these discussions with her. So we have high need here in town for all these types of residential, and all the way up, and not just the residential, but also the next levels up. We need to actually think about that. We need more assisted living and actually medical for the next higher levels, which is not in this bracket. So that's where another concern I have. We need to actually open it up for someone opening up a higher level facility for us, because we may lose some of the stuff up on B Street. They may not be financially, may run into problems up there or whatever. So we need what we have in B Street, we need more of that to skilled nursing facilities. So let's think about that, including in the next round, not just residential, but the medical also, please. So that's for high need. And the two proposals coming in, and then, and I think you already answered the questions about if it's residential, 6 clients or less, just about any household. So we make sure that we work with the folks on marketing, because in every neighborhood that somebody wants to go in, guess what? The neighbors are going to come in, what are you doing? There's going to be 10 people parked here every day now, because this house has all these people coming in and out all day long. So we need to also be prepared and work with whoever's coming in and work with that neighborhood. It'd be nice if it was accepted and appreciated rather than argued with. So we need to think about a marketing plan going into this situation if it's going to be residential, especially in our traditional single-family home neighborhoods. All of a sudden, this is a cul-de-sac, and you're going to move what into my neighborhood? And parking's already limited a little bit, really? So that battle, we need to at least have folks have a voice and have encouragement to find the right house in the right place so that the neighbors accept it. So that's going to be a hard part right there. But that's going to be a battle, but I just want to make sure we're aware of it and take care of it. But those are the comments I have right now, and we just have a high need. We need to get as much as this, the lower level also, senior living, the residential, and the higher. We need all of that as fast and as soon as possible because of our population is aging. Thank you.
I appreciate your comments on need. I mean, that's really critical in the community. And of the points you made, it sounded like you were satisfied with the ordinance regarding design and SPAR process being included, and it was a recommendation to planning for outreach when applicants come in and things. But I didn't quite hear where you landed on downtown parking. Was there a question, or was it?
Something I would like us to think about is if we have a situation of senior living that's being provided is it senior condos, basically just basically dining and maybe some athletics, and then everybody's on their own. That next level up of residential care, currently, if having that one parking space is going to prevent anybody from even looking at a property in the downtown area because there's not enough parking, because it's not going to be able to meet that standard of one for the 30 units that want to build in a single building. So are we stopping at downtown, or are we going to allow that downtown and have them, so that's all totally valet and Uber and Lyft is going to be adequate for that? Or are we just going to say, hey, stay out of downtown? So I just thought I'd just bring that up and see
Okay.
how the council feels.
I think I understand your point now. Councilmember Quint, anything on this one?
Yeah, for me, it was a shame that Councilmember Now left. I wanted to appreciate the comments that she made with the shuttle. I thought that was very insightful. Beyond that, I think it's a slam dunk. We need housing. We need housing desperately. And this is one measure to help make it easier to build housing. So,
thank you very much. Do you want to make that first comment one more time?
I wanted to express my appreciation for your comment on the shuttle. I thought it was insightful, and anyway, I just appreciated it.
Thank you. And from here, Vice Mayor?
I just want to get a little bit of clarification on the parking with residential. Because I thought I understood you said a 6-bedroom house would have 6 parking spots. But then I don't know if maybe there's a difference between bedrooms and clients at facilities. Because then in here, in the proposed changes, talks about 2 spaces for the first 6 clients, and then an additional quarter space for every client thereafter.
So the 2 covered spaces or uncovered spaces for the first 6 clients, that's in the non-residential zones. And then 1 space for every 4 clients on top of that. In the single-family or multifamily residential zones, so for a facility with up to 10 clients, it's the base single-family or multifamily parking standard applies. So the base standard for a single-family home is 3 parking spaces. If you have a 4-bedroom house or larger, for every bedroom, it's an additional parking space. So a 5-bedroom house would be 5 parking spaces, 6-bedroom, 6 spaces, so on. So it's not tied to clients until you get up to 10 clients. And then if you have more than 10 clients, then it's 1 for every 4 on top of whatever number of bedroom count you have. So whatever the base requirement is.
Okay. And then in residential, are bedrooms allowed to be bisected or to have 1 bedroom but 2 people in it, a wall, or however that's set up? And then is that factored into parking too? So
You could have, so there are either private rooms where there's 1 occupant per room, or you can have semi-private rooms where you have two people in a room. I don't know if there's state requirements in terms of minimum bedroom size for these types of facilities. I'd imagine there are. And I believe there are, under the building code, there's a minimum bedroom size requirement.
But council member, or I'm sorry, Vice Mayor, I also think it's important to recognize that in our residential zoning districts, the state does not allow us to regulate other than what we would regulate for residential use. So we don't really, the state doesn't give us any flexibility on parking in residential zoning districts. It's whatever we require for a residential dwelling unit. Also applies to a residential care facility.
Okay, thank you. I mean, the kind of the way I feel about this is I think the minimum is too low, and I think I'd be much more apt to support it if it were 0.75 or 1 or something higher. I think it's interesting that we have two applicants right now kind of on opposite sides of the spectrum, where you have one that wants, a lot of parking, and then you have one that says they can't do it with the minimum as it is. So I think that would be would have been an interesting opportunity to analyze that a little bit more coming into this and see what the constraints or circumstances were between those two. But I mean, nonetheless, it seems to me that the minimum is low. And, looking at going back to the zoning questions I had, I think, this allows us to be a little bit too free with stuff. And, and I mean, downtown's always the example, but there's other areas of mixed use where, this might become a problem or an unintended consequence or something we didn't desire, and then at the same time too, our commercial zones in Petaluma having such a desire now to build our economy and bring back business and everything. I also not sure that we should be opening up commercial to something like this, and I do acknowledge that there is a need for more care facilities in Petaluma, but this seems like too broad of a plan at this point to support it.
Thank you. I'm going to weigh in now, and I kind of agree with you on the point that we're opening up an awful lot of opportunity for residential. I mean, anything could go into residential now, and that sort of to Mr. Rackeson's point too, where there's just so much going in, and we have conversations going on about shuttering commercial space, demoing existing vacant commercial and turning it into residential, yet I'm not seeing any housing being built. I mean, not to any substance. A lot of what the public and ourselves feel is traffic, and we feel parking, things like that. But we have a housing crisis, and that's kind of where my front of mind is that we have affordability crisis, housing crisis, and I don't want this to be solely a conversation about parking. I think, as pointed out by Councilmember Shribs, this is all integrated into better housing policy. As seniors move in here, this is opportunity. It's need in that as you age, you do have different housing needs, but it's also right now, if you don't move out of the big house you raise the kids in, then new families don't come in, and that's problematic in our community, and so it does provide opportunities. And so I think we're fishing around for better ways to create housing to occur on so many different levels, and streamlining this and finding out if we get one more applicant next year. One applicant this year is wonderful, but shall we say not impactful to the need, to the basis of need. I also think that as we talk about all this parking and whatnot, the other day with the transit meeting that occurred, we were talking about the dollars for Luma Go, or they were talking about the dollars for Luma Go or transit routes and things like this, without overtly saying it's housing policy. We can't just cut a bus route because we don't have the money for the bus route. We have to say we're cutting bus routes, and that impacts our housing policy, and it impacts our climate policy, and all these things are tied together. And my take on this is I just want to see one good thing happen. I don't have a fear that every possible thing will happen I want to see one more new project come in, and I think this will help. Councilmember Barnacle.
Yeah, I appreciate the comments from my colleagues. So I think absolutely this is a housing policy. If we see unintended consequences from these things, we can, we're not going to see them in such wide swaths that like, oh my gosh, now we've got, 50 applications for residential care facilities next week and our planning department's overrun and, we're really, really in a hurt. We're going to see something that happens and we're going to change our policies. Right now, what we're seeing is our policies are preventing us from getting this. And so that's, one of the reasons why I feel comfortable with this, because I would love to be on the other side of something and seeing the other problem, right? In terms of, downtown and things like that, I absolutely want to see more housing downtown. I would love to see people downsizing from the suburbs and, going and living in walkable areas and more social environments where they can, play chess on the chess tables that hardly ever get used, things like that. So with that, I'm going to make a motion to adopt this, and hopefully we see support.
And we have a motion by Barnacle and Councilmember Shribs.
Before I second it, one more question, just to answer for clarification.
And we do. You want to do the second first and then hit the question?
If I'm allowed.
Okay. Yes. Go.
I would like to second the motion.
Thank you. And then your question.
The question is, just for clarification, parking. There's usually in residentials, there's a 2-car garage and a 2-car apron in front of that garage. Does that count as 2 or 4 parking spaces, especially when the garage is full of supplies?
And I'm going to ask staff to repeat back the question. The mic wasn't on, and so I want it to be captured.
Sure. So the question that the council member posed was, if we have a residential dwelling unit with a 2-car garage and then 2 tandem parking spaces or side-by-side parking spaces rather in front of the garage, does that count as 2 parking spaces or 4? The answer is it would count as 4 parking spaces. However, if the garage is multi-purposed, shall we say, for something other than parking, then do we reduce that to 2 parking spaces? And the answer is no. We would still count it as 4.
So anyway, that's one of the problems I'm seeing. Someone could just have, if that's counted as parking, then they could just have not even an apron, just a 2-car garage right on the street. And that's and they fill it up with storage and there's 0 parking in actuality. So I would prefer if there's in the rule, a parking space is a parking space for a car, not a storage. If their intention is the garage is going to use a storage, that does not count as parking. That must be one of the requirements put in, if that's the intent.
Sure, under state law, council member, then we would have to make that regulation for the entire city for any residential use. It can't just be for residential care facilities.
That might be worthwhile doing, actually.
Can I,
Okay, Councilmember Quinn.
what's the official term? Call the question. Can we vote?
Yep, there you go. I think that's a thing. And so we have motion by Barnacle and second by Shribs. And may we have our roll call vote, please?
Barnacle?
Aye.
Gator Thompson?
Yes.
DeCarly?
No.
Now?
Yes.
Quint?
Yes.
Shribs?
Yes.
McDonald?
Yes.
Motion carries with Councilmember DeCarly voting no.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Cater
I
Thompson.
just want to make a comment that when the Deer Creek Shopping Center was being developed, former Mayor David Glass really pushed for a facility like this. And it went down, and now here we're reversing everything because what was done then really inhibited housing. And the housing at Deer Creek was not allowed either, and then that was reversed. So this is just another
world goes
reversal.
around, doesn't it? Yes. So I think that heads us towards the adjournment of our meeting. But before we close, I just want to mention one more time that we're closing in honor of Sid Lipton and his long service and long life in Petaluma. Thank you very much. This meeting is adjourned.